Ladies and gentlemen, His Excellency Minister Cho and distinguished guests are now entering the hall. Please welcome them with a big round of applause. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our distinguished guests with a big round of applause. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your attendance. And now we will begin our 6th Digital at Sea Asia Pacific Conference opening ceremony. Thank you very much for your attendance once again. And before we begin in earnest, allow me to briefly go over today's proceedings. We will have an introduction of our distinguished guests, the opening address, some congratulatory remarks from our distinguished guests, and then a keynote speech. And then altogether, we will have a commemorative photo shoot. And for the opening ceremony, we also have a performance planned for you. So with that, let us invite our opera artist, Miss Kim Sun-hee, who will sing for us in Korean, 아름다운 나라, which means beautiful country. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome her with a big round of applause.
자
Ladies and gentlemen, please give her another big round of applause. Thank you. What beautiful melody and tunes. For those of our guests who are here from overseas, unfortunately, the lyrics were in Korean, so allow me to briefly explain what she was singing about. The song title was Beautiful Country, and the lyrics were about the 4 different seasons and how the singer was so blessed to be living in such a beautiful country with such beautiful, distinct seasons. So I hope that the tunes were able to relay the emotions of the singer to you. So thank you once again for joining us at this auspicious occasion, and welcome to the 2022 Digital at Sea Asia Pacific Conference. My name is Ju-Yeon Cho, and it is definitely an honor to be hosting such a distinguished group of delegates. Allow me to introduce myself and greet you in the traditional Korean way. Thank you very much. And in fact, I have seen some of our delegates online for a couple of years now, but it is definitely an honor to be able to greet you here in person this year. Marking its 6th anniversary since its inception, the Digital at Sea Asia Pacific Conference is one of the 3 top global conferences sharing maritime digital technologies and striving to successfully achieve digital transformation. And this year, the conference will be held over the next 2 days under the topic of harmonious cooperation for global maritime digitalization. And we will be looking at 5 different sessions over the next 2 days. And as a side event, we'll also have an MOU signing event on the 2nd day to cooperate in creating an international maritime digital cluster. So please look forward to that on the 2nd day as well. This year, the 2022 Digital at Sea Asia Pacific Conference is held in a hybrid manner, both online and offline. So for those of you joining us online, please search for your interpretation channels. We have both English and Korean. For those of us joining us offline, please use the receivers, turn to channel 1 for Korean and channel 2 for English, as we both have Korean and English-speaking speakers. So, without further ado, let us begin the 2022 Digital at Sea Asia Pacific Conference. And with that, allow me to introduce our esteemed guests. And when I do, please welcome them with a big round of applause. First and foremost, His Excellency Minister Seung Hwan of Oceans and Fisheries of the Republic of Korea. Thank you very much. Secretary General Francis Zachariae of the International Association of Marine Aids to Navigation and Lighthouse Authorities, IALA. Thank you very much. Mr. Mick Kinley, Chief Executive Officer of the Australian Maritime Safety Authority, AMSA. Thank you very much. Director Abri Kampfer of International Hydrographic Organization, IHO. Thank you for joining us. Thank you. President Oh Eun-yeol of the Korea Institute of Marine Science and Technology Promotion. Thank you very much. Standing Director Kim Young-moo of the Korea Ship Owners Association is joining us today. Thank you very much. Chairman and CEO, Mr. Lee Hyung-chul of the Korean Register is joining us today. Thank you very much. President Park Kwang-yeol of the Korea Institute of Aids to Navigation is joining us. Thank you very much for your presence. President Kim Boo-gi of the Korea Research Institute of Ships and Ocean Engineering is joining us. Thank you very much. And last but not least, Director General Chung Tae-seung of Maritime Safety Policy Bureau of the Ministry of Oceans and Fisheries is joining us. Thank you very much. And ladies and gentlemen, please understand that we do have many other distinguished guests joining us, but due to time constraints, we could not introduce each and every one of them. Thank you very much. So first and foremost, please welcome His Excellency Minister Cho Seung-Hwan of Oceans and Fisheries to deliver his opening address. Please welcome him with a big round of applause.
Good afternoon, everyone and participants. I'm Seung Ministry of Oceans and Fisheries. It's my great pleasure and privilege in joining this conference and giving opening remarks. Your Excellencies and honorable distinguished guests and ladies and gentlemen, I would like to express my immense gratitude to all of you for the participating the 6th Digital at Sea Asia Pacific Conference. This year's conference holds much more meaning as we have gathered here today in person. As we are all aware, the Digital at Sea Conference was held online both in 2020 and 2021 due to the challenge posed by the COVID-19 pandemic. First of all, my sincere gratitude goes to Mr. Francis Zachariae, the Secretary General of the IALA, and Mr. Mick, the CEO of the AMSA, and to Mr. Abri, the Director of the IHO. I also like to appreciate Mr. Tack, the Secretary General of IMO, and the Andreas Nordseth, the Director of the DMA, who will deliver online congratulatory remarks and share their insight on maritime digitalization. And furthermore, I would like to express my heartfelt appreciation to our distinguished speaker and experts who have traveled all the way to Seoul and to take part in this conference in person. For this conference, simultaneous interpretation is available, and I don't want to annoy you with my poor English skill. From now on, it will be on Korean. So please enjoy the fluent simultaneous interpreter. 존경하는 기빈 여러분, 이번 컨퍼런스는 재작년에 창립된 유럽, 북미, 아태 지역 간의 국제 해양 디지털 협력 이니시티브에 따라 개최되고 상호 협력 체계를 굳건히 확립하는 데 큰 의의가 있습니다.
The conference is committed to building strong mutual cooperative systems. Especially this year's conference has a goal of exploring ideas that can contribute to maritime digitalization and carbon reduction for the international community's shared growth. In that sense, the theme of the conference this year is a harmonized cooperation for global standardization of maritime digitalization. With this conference, I look forward to jointly addressing the forthcoming 2D era, that is de-carbonization and digitalization, by further enhancing the cooperation into harmonized maritime digitalization among Europe, North America, and Asia Pacific. Ladies and gentlemen, our ships and shipping industry have created a pathway for import and export becoming a solid supporter of our economy, but the global shipping market is facing numerous challenges. Rapid changes in the maritime environment, such as high oil oil prices, expensive labor, and decarbonization have brought unprecedented risks and challenges. These challenges cannot be addressed by one country alone. We have to put our heads together to solve them. Facing these risks and challenges, I'd like to make 3 suggestions to address them. First, we have lessons learned from the COVID-19 pandemic and the urgency of introducing non-contact maritime services by digitalization. Maritime digitalization facilitates port automation, green ships, and smart logistics. Especially maritime digitalization will be an opportunity to enhance the safety of people in the maritime sector, including seafarers, and to create jobs. In that sense, based on the cooperative system in the e-navigation so far, we need a harmonized way to cooperate for international standardization across the emerging digital technologies in the maritime sector. Second, to facilitate maritime digitalization, we need to build a common platform that everyone in the world has easy access to. As the shipping and the maritime industries are international business, it is necessary to build a maritime digital information sharing platform that is compatible among Europe, North America, and Asia Pacific, and to use it to address challenges facing us. Third, to facilitate maritime digitalization and to foster new industries, the international community should strive for the joint validation and verification on the effect of maritime digital technologies that are to be introduced at sea in practice. I believe we all agree that these objectives cannot be achieved through one country alone. I believe all of us need to share know-hows in maritime digitalization and cooperation in jointly validating and verifying maritime digital technologies. Ladies and gentlemen, hyper-connected maritime digital era will be an era that creates mutual growth rather than competition and values of co-prosperity for the humanity. I hope this conference will be a valuable opportunity, helping us to take the first step to promote the 2D era, decarbonization, and digitalization. Lastly, once again, I'd like to thank Secretary General of IALA, Francis Zachariae, CEO of AMSA, Mick Kinley, Director of IAHO, Abri Kampfer, and all the participants coming all the way to Korea to be with us today. I wish you health and happiness. Thank you so much.
Thank you once again, Your Excellency Minister Hwan of Oceans and Fisheries, for your kind remarks, as well as your leadership in the Ministry for Digital Transformation. Thank you very much. And next, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming a gentleman who has traveled long and far to be here with us today. Please welcome Secretary General Francis Zachariae of IALA for his congratulatory address. Please welcome him to the stage with a big round of applause.
Thank you. Mr. Minister, Chief Executives, Directors, delegates from around the world, and dear colleagues. I'm very pleased to be witness to this 6th conference in the Asia-Pacific region, now called Digital at Sea. And of course, pleased again to be physically in the Republic of Korea, a very, very strong supporter of IALA and the digital agenda, both as holding the presidency of IALA for the moment, a council member, and also a very active participant in all 4 IALA committees. Lately, Korea is also a main driver in lighthouse heritage after the Incheon Declaration on lighthouses as cultural heritage from the conference held in Incheon 4 years ago. Korea is a leading nation when it comes to the e-navigation concept. You have the skills, the resources, and the will to lead this important development for the safety of navigation worldwide. This Asia-Pacific input brings a lot of added value to the series of conferences that took off in 2011 with the first international conference hosted by the Danish Maritime Authority in cooperation with IALA. A separate North American Digital at Sea conference was established in 2014 and has since then also taken place on an annual basis. The Digital at Sea initiative complements the e-navigation work carried out by the International Maritime Organization, supported by a wide range of concerned stakeholders, and with the IMO acting as the leading coordinator to ensure a global approach to e-navigation developments. This two-day conference is in the dynamic city of Seoul, has its own special contribution to make from an Asian Pacific perspective. Today, we will talk about important topics like decarbonization and international standards. But with the digital age, we must of course cope with cybersecurity in the maritime sector, as we have done in the IALA workshop that we hosted last year. During this session tomorrow, I really hope that we can concentrate on the challenges for the maritime sector in this important aspect. Before we wrap up tomorrow evening, there's a whole session devoted to the concept and upcoming conferences. We look forward to the Digital at Sea conference next year, early next year in Copenhagen, where it all started in 2011. During this point, I would like to thank our Korean host, our good friends, for setting up the consolidated website on the conferences that you should all visit if you have not done so. It is a very professional thing and makes an excellent common platform for all these important events. With this, I conclude my welcome address. I very much look forward to the presentations and discussions that are planned for the next 2 days. I'm sure that we shall all learn from them and come to fruitful conclusions and conference highlights that will all be studied in the IALA committees after this conference. Thank you for your kind attention, and again, congratulations and appreciation to our host, organizers, and friends from Korea. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your kind words, Secretary General Francis Zachariae, and of course, thank you for all of the work that IALA is doing in order to overcome a lot of the challenges that the industry is facing. We also look forward for the cooperation in the future. Thank you very much. And now, ladies and gentlemen, as our minister has mentioned in his welcome address, we also have Secretary General Tack of the International Maritime Organization, who has remembered to say a few remarks over a video message and in congratulating us on hosting a successful conference. So, ladies and gentlemen, please turn your attention to the screen.
Excellencies, Minister, ladies and gentlemen, it is a great pleasure to open the Digital at the Sea Asia Pacific Conference 2022. My appreciation goes to the Government of the Republic of Korea for organizing this conference, which provides an excellent opportunity to highlight the needs for cooperation to achieve maritime digitalization, which is vital for shipping's future. The attention of the world was drawn to the importance of the seaborne global trade to the world economy throughout the COVID-19 pandemic, but the maritime sector has always been and will remain at the heart of the connecting global supply chain. Seamless operation of maritime trade is vital to sustain these supply chains. This is only possible through fast, effective, and reliable electronic communication. The time to embrace a digital future was never more opportune than now. IMO aims to support shipping the digital revolution by developing the essential regulatory framework to facilitate digitalization and automation while ensuring safety and environmental protection. Equally important is the IMO's role in managing cybersecurity risks and addressing their impact on personnel on board and ashore. To this end, IMO has introduced mandatory electronic data exchange to increase digitalization in processes for port stays and departures. For example, in May this year, IMO made a single window for data exchange mandatory in ports everywhere to come into effect on 1st January 2024. IMO's e-navigation strategy is also focusing on harmonizing, standardizing, and integrating the way to share and present information between systems both on board and ashore. Last year, IMO completed a regulatory scoping exercise to assess how IMO instrument might apply to maritime autonomous service ships, MASS, with varying degrees of automation. IMO has now approved a roadmap and work plan to develop a code for these vessels. These initiatives illustrate how greater automation, artificial intelligence, and digital technology can transform shipping and transport for the better. Digitalization also has a part to play in reducing greenhouse gas emissions from ships. IMO is implementing projects on port call optimization and just-in-time arrival of ships to improve port efficiencies and cut fuel consumption. I'm very confident that these developments will be a significant step toward facilitating maritime trade and accelerating digitalization. Ladies and gentlemen, shipping is crucial to the smooth flow of the international supply chain. Looking ahead, we will need a continuous engagement and cooperation of all maritime stakeholders across the shipping, port, and logistics sectors to continue on this path toward a digital, efficient, and sustainable maritime industry. I firmly believe that through the coordinated and concerted efforts, we will be able to successfully address these new trends and challenges. I sincerely wish you a successful Digital at Sea Asia Pacific Conference. Thank you.
Thank you once again, Secretary General Im Gi-taek, for your kind words as well as your words of support for a successful conference. And we've also received another congratulatory video from Director General Andreas Nordseth of the Danish Maritime Authority, or the DMA. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, please turn your attention to the screen.
Distinguished delegates, dear colleagues, dear friends, first of all, allow me to give a very big thanks to our friends and colleagues from the Republic of Korea for revitalizing and starting up the actual meetings and gatherings within the Digital at Sea concept. Thank you so much for doing that. This conference is held at an historical time. The shipping industry as a whole is facing historical challenges. The COVID-19 is still over us, and we are also facing geopolitical uncertainty around the world. And on top of everything, we have the climate change, where the green transition demands for all of us to find new ways of operation and to also utilize new technology that we have never used before. And also, at this time, we are facing economic uncertainty that will demand in the coming time that we hunt for more efficiency all around our sector. Looking at this, there's no doubt that digitalization will play a major role in finding solutions. And to find that, we need to focus very much on concrete solutions that provide new solutions for a green transition, more efficiency, more safety, more security. And to do that, we need to come together. We need to find solutions together, work together on finding new ways and also on finding out how we can implement things. And this is what Digital at Sea is all about. So once again, thank you so much to our friends from the Republic of Korea, the Secretariat Digital at Sea, and also our Ministry of Fisheries and Ocean Affairs. And also thank you to IALA for supporting this important conference concept. And with this, I wish you all a very fruitful conference. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Director General, for your kind words. And of course, next year, we mentioned that in Copenhagen, the Digital at Sea concept will host another conference. But I believe that it's due time that we invite Secretary General Lim Gi-taek and Director General Nordseth back to Asia Pacific next time around that we have it in Korea. Maybe next year, we'll be able to see the two gentlemen here in Korea in person. So once again, thank you for your kind remarks. And following suit, we also have the congratulatory remarks from Director Abri Kampfer of the IHO. So please give him a warm round of applause.
Thank you. Mr. Minister, Excellencies, distinguished participants, I would like to congratulate the organizers of Digital at Sea Asia Pacific 2022 conference for this initiative following on the very successful online conference last year. And I'm looking forward to a productive face-to-face conference this year. Digitalization of the maritime industry is an ongoing transformation, and data from sensors and other sources of information can be used for decision-making and enhanced monitoring, control, quality assurance, and verification and improving maritime safety. Standardization and harmonization of the inputs in a format that enables lots of different use cases is ever required. We need interoperability. The known strength of the IHO's expertise lie in ocean mapping and standardization. With the S100 Universal Hydrographic Data Model, the IHO started to develop a versatile standard framework composed of S100 product specifications so as to describe specific aspects of the real maritime world. The advantage of such datasets, based on the same paradigm, is their mutual compatibility and interoperability. The latter supports a multitude of possible combinations of geoinformation encoded in datasets, independent from which science domain they belong to. An all-embracing digital model in place for all kinds of maritime geoinformation based on IHO S100 framework will allow fully interoperable data streams to feed evolving technology for the benefit of the maritime industry. The theme of this conference, Harmonize Cooperation for Global Maritime Digitalization, indicates direction for international cooperation, and the IHO is committed to play its part in this. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Abri Kampfer, for your kind words and your support from the IHO. And we look forward to further interest and support as well. And now, ladies and gentlemen, let us move on to our keynote address, which will be delivered by Mr. Mick Kinley, the CEO of AMSA. Ladies and gentlemen, please give him a big round of applause.
Excellencies, distinguished guests, Secretary General, Director General, so happy to see you all here today, and I'm very happy to be here in person in Korea. Only time will reveal what the long-term impacts of COVID on shipping and the maritime industry are. But what we do know already is that the world woke up and they realised how shipping is essential to their lives. and the seafarers that run those ships were also essential. Global commerce, and by that I mean the people who do their online shopping, demand better service. They want door-to-door service, they want it optimised, and they want it quickly. Digitalisation of our industry is going to be the thing that is going to make that happen. It's going to make it efficient, and it's going to be the thing that keeps global commerce moving. The digitalisation is gaining pace, but it needs to gain much more pace, and a lot more needs to be done. The implementation of maritime single windows, and we heard the Secretary General of the IMO saying the IMO has mandated it. That's the easy bit. It's the people who are in this room who now have to do the work to make that happen. And coming back to the theme of harmonious cooperation, which is the theme today, the world needs harmonious cooperation now more than ever. And it is up to meetings like this that are going to make that harmonious cooperation happen. There is so much new technology that the maritime industry is yet to adopt that we see ashore all the time. And the solutions which we will come up in events like this are going to be the things that are going to allow the shipping industry to make that technological leap into the modern world. The other D, decarbonisation, is of course, we've already heard and we all know how important it is. Anyone in the shipping industry is probably sick of hearing about decarbonisation, but we're already seeing that the digitalisation and decarbonisation are coming together. Decarbonisation is not going to happen without that digitalisation enabling new innovative approaches to shipping to take place. In Australia, for example, Newcastle, which is a very large coal port, has been using vessel optimisation and arrivals, which they originally did for a safety reason. And we've done studies with them which have indicated that there are very significant greenhouse gas savings which are made from a very simple thing, like having ships not rushing to a port to go to anchor and instead optimising their speed and allowing them to arrive in time at that port. Very simple, but you need the digital technology and the transparency that digital technology brings to allow those sorts of systems to work. And digital technologies are going to be the thing that is going to keep the level playing field and keep all of the shipping world honest and make sure that we all do our part to contribute to the decarbonisation of the industry. For me, I've been coming along to the Digital at Sea conference and e-navigation underway in the past. I still think that as an industry, we've not found that killer application, though, that is going to be the transformation which is going to get the ship owners and the seafarers on board with embracing that digital technology. And I think that's our next big challenge. How do we develop that value proposition that the industry is going to embrace and take ahead? And I'm particularly pleased to see that we do have the representatives from the ship owners here today as well. I think that is essential, that we're all in this together and we're all cooperating together. As an ex-seafarer, I cannot not mention seafarers. My understanding and my belief is that while there has been a lot of focus at the IMO about autonomous ships, I think it's going to be a long time before we see a fully autonomous bulk carrier, for example, coming into our ports in Australia. The cost to fully automate and make a bulk carrier, for example, autonomous, I think is going to not stack up economically for ship owners for a long time, when they can have a crew on board a ship who will also be there maintaining that asset. So the other challenge for us with digitalisation is how we are going to use digitalisation to make the lives of seafarers easier, to make their job easier and to make it safer and give seafarers a better quality of life in the job that they are doing, which is essential to all of us. And we all know it's a hard job, it's a thankless job, it's a job that is often removed from families, and how digitalisation can help with the welfare of seafarers into the future, I think, is also essential. And harmonisation is going to be the key to all of these things, and I think it's terrific that that is the theme of this conference, and I'm very happy that I will be chairing that session tomorrow. Excellent to see so many people here, the strong interest that the industry and that governments and that other bodies are showing in digitalisation shows that we understand how important it is to get it right. And I think the goodwill, that harmonisation and cooperation is going to be what will make it real, what will make it happen, and what will deliver the real results for ship owners, seafarers, and ultimately the communities that we support in the future. I wish you all success. I know I'm between us and coffee and the real experts who'll be talking. So thank you very much for listening and looking forward to a very successful event. Thank you.
Thank you for your keynote speech, Mr. Mick Kinley. And in fact, there's something before you and coffee. So we actually have another commemorative photo before we take a coffee break. So ladies and gentlemen, we have a short break for a commemorative photo. So allow us a minute or so for us to set the stage. So I will briefly inform you on how we will take the photo, because we will take two photos, one with just everyone sitting down and smiling for the photograph, and two, we will do the fighting pose. And for our overseas guests, fighting does not mean that we're going to fight. It's actually from the fighting spirit. And so in the fighting spirit for a successful conference, we will have this pose of having your fist out and having a shouting out fighting. That will be our cue for our photo. So if you've understood, then we will direct all our distinguished guests up on stage. I believe that we are now ready. So we'll have our guests sitting in the front row. I believe that we have our tags on the chairs. And all of our speakers, please join us and please stand in the second row. 네, 저희 사진 촬영을 위해서 앞쪽으로 모시도록 하겠습니다. 앞에 의자에 성함이 있으신 분들께서는 앞 좌석에 앉아주시고, 그리고 연사분들께서는 뒤에 서주시면 감사하겠습니다. So our ladies and gentlemen in the audience, please bear with us just for a couple of minutes. We will take a photo and then break for coffee. Thank you very much. So as I mentioned, the first photo will just be everyone sitting and watching the camera and smiling with our eyes because we have our masks on. 네, 기자님 저 사인 주세요. 제가 하나, 둘, 셋 호명을 해드릴까요? 네, I will count to 3. 1, 2, 3, and big smiles with your eyes, please. 1, 2, 3. Smile. 네, 다음에는 화이팅입니다. And next is the fighting pose, okay? And this is with your fist and with your elbow on a 90-degree angle. 1, 2, 3. 화이팅! 네, 감사합니다. 박수 부탁드리겠습니다. A big round of applause. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And now this is the official end to our opening ceremony, ladies and gentlemen. We will have a short recess, and then the role of maritime digitization for decarbonization will resume from 3 p.m. Thank you very much. 네, 잠시 후 3시부터 저희가 첫 번째 세션 시작하도록 하겠습니다. 고맙습니다. Everyone seems to be ready to start our first session, so let us get to it. So the first session is the role of maritime digitalization for decarbonization, as was mentioned. For our moderator and our presenters, we kindly ask you to please be wary of time. I know that we have a lot to discuss, but we also have a Q&A at the very end, and we do want to give our audience a chance to give questions. And we also have our online audiences as well, so we will be taking questions online. With that, I would like to introduce our moderator, who will be Secretary General Francis Zachariae from IALA. He will be taking us through our first session. With that, ladies and gentlemen, I give our moderator the floor. Thank you very much.
Does it? Yeah, it works. Thank you very much for that. And after this impressive welcome ceremony, I welcome you all to this first session of the conference. And it is, as we heard, the role of maritime digitalization for decarbonization. The subject is, as you can see, quite specific for decarbonization, but I have agreed with the speakers that in the interest of the audience and all the different backgrounds that we have, we will be a little bit more general and look into the role of digitalization in areas that serves the maritime sector. And decarbonization will, of course, be important in this aspect. I'm actually of the opinion that the maritime sector is driven by regulation and or a business case. So in my mind, all digital solutions need to assist one of those. It is important to realize that we are now, again, in my opinion, beyond the phase where we are fascinated by what is possible and need to focus more on what is actually helpful. And there are still too many digital projects today that are driven by what is possible, and in my mind, too little on what is really needed and helpful for the maritime sector. And I think that's an important message, that we need to focus on help with regulations, decarbonization, for instance, or a good business case for the ship owners and the industry. So we have with us three excellent speakers. We have Mr. Han-Jin Lee. He has been with the Korean Research Institute of Ships and Ocean Engineering, a good member of IALA, since 1997, and is now serving as the Vice President. And he was the General Project Manager of the Smart Navigation Project, where he developed the e-navigation system, which began providing essential maritime services for ships' safety in Korean waters last year. And you can learn much more about the SMART project in the hall, where you can see much more information about that. He holds a PhD in naval architecture and ocean engineering from Seoul National University in Korea. We have with us online Mr. Jeppe Juhl, and he is a naval architect who works for BIMCO. Before that, he worked for the Danish Maritime Authority, where he was responsible for the implementation of international rules and regulations into national maritime legislation. At BIMCO, he's an industry expert on technical subjects, bringing the gap between the regulatory policy level and the technical level together. Very important. Then we have Mahesh Alimchandani, and he is the head of Navigation and Communication Systems and Policy and Regulation Division of AMSA, the Australian Maritime Safety Administration, where he has served for more than 26 years, I think. You mentioned Mahesh. Mahesh is a master mariner and has served on a variety of ocean-going cargo ships, and he has also a master's degree in business administration from the University of Canberra. And very importantly, he has served as the technical manager in IALA in Paris from 2006 to 2008. The last speaker will be Andrei Sitkov, and he is the CTO of Marine Works, and you can find the Marine Works exhibition in the hall. And before that, he had several positions in Transas Marine. Both companies are members of IALA. And since May 18, part of the Wärtsilä Corporation, I think in Finnish they would say Wärtsilä, is that correct? Corporation as a project engineer. And in 18, he was appointed as the interim CEO after Transas was acquired by Wärtsilä. So we have 4 very competent speakers. And I think we will start with Mr. Han-Jin Lee. So please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chairman. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's my pleasure to present the Green Maritime Digitalization for Decarbonization in this conference. Since this is the first session of this conference, I would like to briefly summarize IMO's plan for decarbonization and then discuss digitalization for decarbonization. I take off my mask. First, I will briefly introduce the IMO GHG reduction plan. Next, we'll look at the alternative fuels and digitalization for decarbonization. Maybe you are already familiar with the IMO's greenhouse gas GHG reduction plan. However, once again, let's take a brief look at the IMO activities and plans for GHG reduction to start the discussion in this conference. MEPC Committee of IMO adopted the resolution Initial IMO Strategy on Reduction of GHG Emissions from Ships in 2018. To achieve the goals set in the initial strategy, short, mid, and long-term measures were discussed and various reviews were conducted. It is expected that the MEPC Committee will adopt a revised strategy with more stringent goals in the coming year. With 2008 as a baseline year, IMO strategy aims to reduce at least 50% of total GHG emissions from shipping by 2050. At the same time, it aims to reduce the average carbon intensity by at least 40% by 2030 and 70% before mid-century. The short-term measures aims to reduce the carbon intensity of ships. IMO requires ships to calculate their energy efficiency existing ship index, EEXI, and establish their annual operational carbon intensity indicator, CII. CII determines the annual reduction factor required to improve the ship's operational carbon intensity. The actual operational CII must be documented and verified against the required annual operational CII. The CII value determines the operational carbon intensity rating of the vessel. From 2023, next year, existing ships will be subjected to CII regulations. As mid and long-term measures, GHG levy, emissions trading system, and the GHG fuel standard are being considered. In actual application, it is expected that several of these means will be combined. Now, let's briefly summarize the most powerful means to reduce greenhouse gas, alternative fuels. There are many technical and operational measures to reduce GHG, but up to 100 GHG reduction can only be achieved with alternative fuels. In the short term, equipment that improves energy efficiency can be used. However, low-carbon fuels such as LNG biofuel and carbon-free fuels such as ammonia and hydrogen are essential to satisfy the IMO's GHG reduction goals. There are many types of eco-friendly alternative fuels, such as LNG, ammonia, and hydrogen. They were analyzed and summarized in this table. Now, fuel for vessels must be eco-friendly, but there are some problems with the fuel supply chain, space utilization, cost, etc. For example, ammonia and hydrogen have very low energy densities in terms of volume. That means that the system size required to store the same energy increases. due to time constraint, I will skip these slides. So now I will summarize the possible digitalization for decarbonization. Especially, I would like to introduce the current status of standard related to maritime digitalization and the research project in Korea based on those standards. Many people engaged in marine transportation plans to reduce carbon emission to zero by using carbon-free fuels. However, there is difficulty in that it has to wait a very long time until the carbon-free propulsion system is commercialized. It is when stepping stone technology is needed to cross the valley between current fuels and the future carbon-free fuel. One such stepping stone is the installation of separate facilities on ships, such as equipment that captures and stores carbon emissions. However, not all ships will be able to do so, and you can think of other ways to reduce their speed and keep adjusting their navigation plan while calculating their carbon footprint. Fortunately, the recent digitalization of the maritime sector could help this approach. Just skip this slide. I think the essence of digital transformation in ships in maritime autonomous surface ships. The Korean government also started the Korean Autonomous Surface Ship project in 2020. This picture on the screen shows the logical configuration of the mass system being developed by the Korean project. If you look at the figure, it can be seen that there are various subsystems, such as IoT sensors for situational awareness, engine control, damage control, etc. They are integrated according to ISO 19847 and 8 standards. The traditional standard for data exchange between marine navigation equipments is the 611, 622 series of IEC. These standards range from the conventional NMA 0183 to the recent network security. The standards established by ISO for onboard data sharing of smart ships are 19847 and 19848. These are standards based on MQTT, message queue telemetry, transport telemetry, or representative protocol in the IoT field. Although various standards can be applied to share data on board, the Korean project is developing the mass system based on ISO and IEC standards. I will introduce the standards on the port side, another pillar for the digitalization of the maritime sector. Looking at the standard for port digitalization, the guidelines for single-window implementation of the IMO Facilitation Committee stand out the most, especially the FAL Convention 2024 includes mandatory single window. If you look at the single window guideline, the request for using IMO compendium is mentioned in several places. The compendium is the reference data model IMO created by FAL committee. The revised guidelines include the consideration of protocol optimization too. The FAL committee is also developing guidelines on harmonized communication and electronic exchange of operational data for protocols. The protocol guidelines refer to, again, ISO 19878 and IALA's S211 for data format standard. In particular, IALA S211 is a standard developed according to IHO S100 framework for protocols information exchange. So I think there is a possibility of future use. In addition to the standards in this slide, there are various standards such as ISO 28005. Anyway, I think there is a possibility of future use of IALA S211. A maritime single window system that relies mainly on EDI already exists in Korea. This system is called Port MIS. However, to reflect the various standardization activities of the FAA committees and to link the various information systems of ships and ports, a new project called AI Port Chain has been launched this year. This project aims to develop an information chain between ships, the ports, and the hinterland to improve logistics efficiency and protect the port's environment. This picture on the slide shows information systems currently in operation or under development in Korean waters. Smart navigation, a Korean navigation system, Korean autonomous surface ships, Port MIS, and the port automation system are presented. Port community system, a platform for data exchange within a port, does not yet exist. However, through the AI Port Chain project, we plan to develop a prototype that can test the role of the data sharing information, including ship information system, while reflecting the standard of IMO, IALA, and so on. It can be expected that this digitalization project and international standards will increase the operational efficiency of ships and ports and will lead to reduction in greenhouse gas. Okay, now let's summarize what has been introduced so far. The digitalization of ships and the ports described in the previous slide can be seen as part of the effort to implement the just-in-time operation described in Just-in-Time Arrival Guide released by GLOMIP and IMO in 2020. If a port and a ship can perform necessary tasks without losing their own time, and if necessary information can be exchanged immediately in this process, the ship can plan a route that minimizes energy use. It will also be possible to operate the engine to minimize energy consumption when navigating this route. What is needed in this process is to have an information sharing system to optimize the entire process of navigation and port calls. Various standardization works for the digitalization of ships and ports are in progress. For these standards to be truly effective in reducing GHG emissions, I think they must be harmonized so that information on ships and ports can flow uninterrupted. Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Han-Jin, for this excellent presentation. I think we will now turn to Jeppe Juhl, who is online. If he's with us online, I don't know. Hello, Jeppe. Are you there from Bagsvær in Denmark?
Yes, thank you, Francis. I am very much with you. I hope that you can see my presentation. And yes. First of all, I would like to thank you and express my big thanks to Digital@Sea Asia Pacific for inviting me to give this virtual presentation. This is a very interesting subject and very interesting conference, so many thanks. And I also want to express my thanks to you, Francis, in particular for your introduction, of course, and for the wise words regarding what is nice to have and what is necessary to have maritime digitalization. Very important sentence. There's no doubt that maritime transport is a backbone of world command. But when it comes to maritime digitalization, shipping has been lacking significantly behind for some reasons. But I believe that this is about to change. We will, in a few years' time, see a radical change in shipping to become more operational efficient and also having more safety on board due to digitalization, and also have a much better environmental performance due to the digitalization. My key conclusion for this presentation is to raise an awareness of an IMO implementation deadline on 1st January 2024, and I will come back to that important date. I just want to see if I can change my slide. Here it is. There are, of course, many hot topics in the maritime conferences. And when looking just at keywords from 2022, you can see a lot of them regards digitalization and environmental subjects. So this is key elements of my presentation. There's a lot of different interpretations of what is digitalization. And if you ask the people in the operation, they are interested in fuel consumptions. If you ask the charterer, it's about when the ship is coming to the port, loading and unloading. And if you go to the hinterland, it's about when the ship is arriving and departing. And then if you ask the administrative authorities, it's details about the port call information. But all these stakeholders do have different focus in the logistic chain. So if we want to capture everything into the digitalization, we need to look how can we connect ship and shore in a better way? How can we enhance the predictability with regard to movements and operations? And also, how can we ensure seamless integration in the transport chain? In this regard, as my presentation is named, harmonization and interoperability is keywords to this digitalization. As mentioned by Mr. Mick Kinley in his opening speech, just-in-time is an obvious case in this regard because it combines digitalization and sustainability. And the same I will do in my presentation, that I will use this just-in-time concept because it's a very easy case to understand. Because you have emission reductions directly, and you will also see reductions in emissions in the port area. This is a slide showing some of the data information to be exchanged with regard to the just-in-time case. The biggest change from the past is that we have to have much better information sharing between all stakeholders in the port. There are already a lot of standards in place, in particular because there has been different focuses when standards has been developed. But there's also a lot of overlapping in the specifications. I think the general issue is that we as industry do have a willingness to do something related to maritime digitization across shipping, but we do have a lower willingness to go for more universal standards, meaning that we adopt each other. The problem is not the standards, because we have lots of them, but the problem is that we actually do have too many, and which one to ensure interoperability and harmonization, which one to select. The previous speaker kindly mentioned the IMO compendium. It's actually a key in this digitalization, in particular when it comes to maritime single windows. World Customs Organization, UNECE, ISO, IMO, many other players has jointly developed this common IMO reference data model. And during the past few years, it has matured and is now a realistic implementation element. Currently, the reference data model consists of about 550 data elements. Additional 150 elements are pending for data modeling, and about 200 new elements are up for discussion and will be soon implemented as well. The data sets concerns the FAL forms, the facilitation forms, the declaration of health, stowaways, just-in-time concept, as I mentioned, and mandatory ship reporting, just to mention some few. And the interesting thing is that the compendium has got lots of traction and gets a lot of input from various contributors from industry. So it's not only a thing related to maritime single window, but it's also a standard data model which can be used across for the maritime digitalization. But when it comes to the information, what kind of information is to be exchanged? We have the ship integrated data, it's the temperature as I mentioned, we have the nautical data, we have operational data, administrative data, and business to business data. And all these elements, I repeat, all these elements are actually covered in the IMO reference data model. So it's a very extensive and comprehensive document which should be used as much as possible. The compendium is a solution which may fit most solutions, and harmonization and interoperability is vital for the success. The interesting thing in this regard, it's combined what is sent from ship to shore to the authorities, but it also capture what is transmitted from shore to ship, and it's a kind of bow tie. The maritime single window is, I believe it's to the right on the screen right now. I believe it is. The maritime single window is situated to the right of the IMO reference data model, whereas industry input to the single window is to the left of the bow tie. It's very important that we make use of this reference data model to exchange information in an easy and smart way so we can have the machine-to-machine solution. It is a window of opportunities, and it will ease the administrative burden on board, but certainly also ashore, and it will increase the quality of data and also the efficiency in the operation of the ship, meaning that we will have reduction in the air emission. The case of the just-in-time is included in the reference data model. So by use of this data structure, we can exchange information on the just-in-time in a smart and easy way through the maritime single window. See, now we come to the conclusion of my presentation, because as the previous speaker mentioned as well, we have a deadline, 1st January 24, and that is that we need to establish digital facilitation declaration forms, but also an obligation to establish a single window. And see, if we do not collaborate across industry, across all actors, then we will end up having loads of different solutions, meaning that we cannot exchange information in a smart way. The ships will have 3,000 different solutions on board, and the solutions, the maritime single windows ashore, may have input from 100,000 ships in a different way. It's not structured. But if we make use of the IMO reference data model as a basis in the concept, then we can actually share information in a smart and easy way by using the same language. I can only emphasize, consider this as basis in your solution when you develop any kind of solution, digital solutions. Conclusion and outlook: harmonization, interoperability is key, and we have to do smarter collaboration beyond our own interest, if I may, saying that this is a situation where we have momentum creating maritime digitalization, and if we fail now, it will be a very long voyage before we will end up in the same situation once again. So please consider go beyond your own personal interest and make use of standards in such way that we can have a maritime digitalization in a smart and easy way. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Jeppe. So a tight deadline there we have to consider. Thank you so much. Our next speaker is then Mahesh, who will speak to us about a little more general view on digitalization at sea. Yep. So the floor is yours, Mahesh.
Thank you for that earlier introduction, Francis, and good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to start by thanking the Ministry of Oceans and Fisheries of the Republic of Korea for inviting me to speak here today. No talk about navigation in a digital world would be complete without a mention of e-navigation. One of the stated aims of e-navigation when we started off this endeavor about 16 years ago was to bring together new and existing navigational aids in a holistic manner. That is to move from something like what you see on the screen to a future state which could look something like what you're seeing on the screen. And as the work on e-navigation got underway at the IMO settled on a definition. I'll let you read that for a minute, but you'll see that I've broken it up into the what was eNav supposed to be, how, and more importantly, why were we doing this? Well, since then, a lot has changed, and at the outset, e-navigation was a bit of a captivating term, a buzzword, but it's now lost some of its impact. There are no new significant work proposals before the IMO, and even IALA's e-navigation committee has modified its name somewhat to include information services and communications, thereby reflecting the actual work that the committee is doing. So the why and the how of e-navigation, in my view, still remain valid. But the what is turning out to be somewhat different. And I say that because when we started off the work on e-navigation, there were a number of projects and test beds that got underway. And they were all to do with things like sea traffic management, port collaborative decision-making. In fact, the number of projects was so many that IALA set up a website to capture testbed results. And on the right-hand side, you will see an extract of just some of the testbeds that were reported to IALA. But since 2006, when this work started off, much has changed in our world. We're hearing a lot about decarbonization. In fact, that is the theme of our conference. Climate change wasn't such a big thing. Increasing automation, and the work on supply chains and just-in-time arrivals. On the plus side, IMO has successfully completed some work on the design of navigation systems. Some of us might be familiar with the term S-mode. The formal title is far too long, but that work has been complete. But what remains is some globally agreed, harmonized systems to do with communications and positioning. And of course, digital maritime services. To coincide with the World AIDS to Navigation Day 3 years ago, my organization, the Australian Maritime Safety Authority, released its strategy document, a photo of which you see on the screen. And you can download that for free on the website if you wish. Its contents are on the right-hand side, but the key element there is section 4, which really looks at the emerging trends and drivers that will influence the provision of navigation services in our waters? What does that mean for industry? And more importantly, what will my organization's policy response be? Well, what about the future of navigation in a digital world? While this quote is somewhat tongue-in-cheek, there are, of course, many challenges ahead. And in the interests of time, I'll just elaborate on 3. With the growing use of automation, we have to ask ourselves, how can we trust autonomous systems? And the short answer is transparency of inputs and outputs, the accuracy of outputs, and human-centered design. How do we deal with boredom and fatigue of the seafarer? Again, very simplistically, get the machines to do what machines are good at, and leave the humans to look at the big picture, reasoning in uncertainty, trying to pick up signals in the middle of noise, and the good old gut feeling. It's pleasing to see that IMO has embarked on some work to develop a goal-based instrument by 2025. But there are a number of challenges that remain with the introduction of automation. I've just listed 3 on the screen. Some of you seeing these 2 images will straight away identify the incident I'm going to talk about. And it's to do with an incident that took place 13 years ago when a bird strike after takeoff took off both the engines of an Airbus A320 aircraft on a domestic flight in the United States. The pilot had a tough decision to make, try and make it back to an airfield or crash land in the Hudson River. We all know what happened. 155 people were saved. And why am I telling you this? Because the captain of the aircraft, Captain Sully Sullenberger, had 2 quotes on automation. The first one simply underscores the need for experience, and the second one is relatively new. He talks about new kinds of errors coming in with automation, and that is something we need to be aware of. And this is also a somewhat concerning statement, which is when things are quiet, it can lower pilots' workload, but when things get busy, it can increase pilots' workload. So that is the paradox of cockpit automation. Turning our attention to the maritime sector and staying with automation, obviously ECDIS is the prime example, and it is front and center of a lot of discussions that take place with maritime administrations and accident investigators. The 2 images on the left-hand side of the screen, the first was a ship that broke into 2. It managed to find the only reef for hundreds of miles in the middle of the Pacific. It planted itself on that and broke into 2. The image on the bottom left was a government vessel, and one would like to think that their standards of training and watchkeeping were better. And the one on the right is about 10 years ago, and the English Channel, and you have to wonder how the ECDIS allowed a route like that to be planned, much less executed. So I'd like to draw attention to a 2018 study by the United Kingdom and Denmark's accident investigating bodies, when it was clear that there was a mismatch between the use of ECDIS on board currently and the intention of its original design and standards. The report emphasized the benefits of ECDIS, and a number of challenges were identified. But to me, the 2 things that were important is that ECDIS continues to be framed and audited in the context of paper charts, and that navigation training is still based on paper chart thinking. The second challenge is harmonization. And it is vital that the world has harmonized standards which then support interoperability and enhance safety. Prior to 1977, for those of you that can remember that far back, the world had about 30 different buoyed systems, but it was thanks to IALA's efforts at harmonization that the world now has a single maritime buoyed system. In the context of digital maritime services, the Maritime Connectivity Consortium, or the MCC, has a key role to play in the harmonization of the various instances of MCP that are being established around the world. And there is an IALA recommendation that underscores the importance of implementing harmonized solutions. The third challenge is training and certification. IMO has the SDCW Convention 1978, as some of you may know, and it has indicated that it will begin a review of the convention and the 95 code next year. The review is so that the convention and the code continue to remain fit for purpose. And from a nav safety point of view, the two statements in the review, or that sort of signal that a review is about to begin, is poor watchkeeping practices, and once again, the move from paper to electronic. There are, of course, a number of other reasons why the review is needed, not the least of which was the 2010 Manila Amendments, which identified a review in 10 years' time. So it is a bit overdue, to be honest. The obvious other one is the introduction of autonomy and a number of other points on the screen. So what does navigation in a digital world really mean? Some of the elements of navigation in the future, and I'm repeating myself here, is the training, which is electronics first, not paper first. But then getting into more specifics, it's the exchange of voyage plans, and we can see standards. The previous speaker talked about this. And a lot of things that can only be displayed in the electronic world. Two publications that I particularly like to point out. One is the British Admiralty's Principles of Navigation Manual, which is truly a contemporary and thorough presentation of best electronic practice. And then the International Chamber of Shipping's Bridge Procedures Guide. So to sum up, navigation in a digital world. What would that look like ideally? It would be automation, all the various information flows that we're aware of and that we'll hear about in the next 2 days. And most importantly, the crew working together as one team. We've seen variations of this in BRM principles, but it's really important that each analyze, prioritize information, and support the other to ensure safe navigation. I'll leave you with two thoughts. One is the move from paper to digital, and the other one, perhaps, is more suited to our COVID times. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your attention.
Excellent, Mahesh. Thank you very much. And the last speaker is Andreas Sitkov, who will now take the floor, please.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Annyeonghaseyo. Thank you very much for giving Marine Works team this chance to present our ideas, how to approach challenges of the 2Ds. Thank you, Francis, for the earlier introduction. Let me check. Yeah. Okay, so I will not go deep inside the regulations. I bet the slide which you could see and the background information which it is based upon will appear in many presentations during this conference. But what I want to point out that there are actions which has to be done now. So it is not anymore a distant objective, but things which has to be addressed by the maritime community today. So it is not only about regulations anymore. Our stakeholders, our best friends, customers and cargo owners, insurance companies, banks, ports, manufacturers, they are looking at the green shipping very seriously. Through their own way of addressing it, through interest at how maritime industry coping with the GSG strategy. So we may anticipate that those ship owners and ship managers who achieve better progress with CO2 emission reduction will have some privilege in commercial. So one may be completely lost in the number of digital technologies available already. As Francis pointed out, which of them are helpful? As Jeb pointed out, there are too many standards. With help of a consultant firm called Titius, a UK-based company, they come up with a summary of digital technologies available today for ship owners and ship managers by the relevance and impact. Basically, the idea is that there are too many technologies, and some companies already for many years implementing many of these quite successfully. But for those who are just starting, the very basic question is, so where do I go from here? Which technology do I choose and how do I implement it? So we were trying to come up with a common denominator. Basically, any of these technologies require a very first step, which is a starting of data collection. Without data collection, without records and storage of this data at a shore, you're basically navigating blind. You don't know your history, you cannot predict your future. And data collection quite naturally linked with the cybersecurity aspects. As soon as data start flying between the vessel and the shore cloud, cybersecurity aspect appear and need to be considered. So when you start collecting the data, you may start measuring, start analyzing, and take actions. In fact, why I call data collection a common denominator for any digital technologies at sea. Because it does not really matter which technology you will implement in which sequence. Data is technology agnostic, so you may use the data for safety, for fuel optimization, for prediction of your trends, etc. So it will not be a failure anyhow if you start doing that. Now, depending on the capacity of a fleet, I put here three potential tires, like vessels which could fall on tire 1, either because of age or because of the ship owner or fleet manager capacity. You cannot implement any smart technologies on board. So the question is, are you out of the game? The answer, not at all. There are plentiful of open data sources, such as CIS logs, weather archives, Clarkson database, new reports, etc., which allow digital technologies to be applied and analytics to be applied without you doing literally anything whatsoever. So, I mean, open sources are good enough to give your preliminary analysis and ideas, what could you do? Then we have the retrofit-ready vessels. So either technically or financially, ship owners, ship managers are willing to install sensors to achieve what we call high-frequency data flow. And when you may collect much higher volume of data, and obviously your analytics will be more reliable. Naturally, Tier 3, those new builds which was born with high-frequency data flow from on board to the shore. So this is just the idea, one example of how the data could be used to deliver you tangible implication from point of view of analytical result, using fancy technologies such as AI and deep learning. So, for example, based on the AS data analysis and weather data, historical weather data, you may receive enough information for RPM profile optimization, input for just-in-time arrival, hull and propeller degradation effect and actions, etc. Making digital twin and using MRV and DCS reports, you may act for ship energy management planning, digitalization, and various other optimizations. So, I mean, you're unlimited with the data from point of view of analytics. So these are another example. And I started with the CII trending and trading and calculation. So based upon simple noon reports and AAS track, you may already have very decent ideas of what will be your CII grade this year and what will be the trend. Fleet benchmarking, including benchmarking within your own fleet and benchmarking with external vessels, will naturally become possible. Hull and propeller degradation effect, again, analytics may suggest when is the best time to do hull cleaning or repainting. So again, this is a rather technical diagram which you may read in the book, but the idea is that left bottom corner suggests that for old and legacy vessels, you literally can do nothing. Through simple software API and open data, you may already have enough information to proceed with analytics. Or you may choose to install sophisticated IoT-ready components on board and receive high-frequency data. At our booth, on the other whole, you see the example of such system installed with one of our customers. To give you some ideas, we also report up to 7 GB of the data per day. That is, of course, including live CCTV and screen captures of EGDIS and radar, but nevertheless, this is quite a high volume of data for analysis. And you basically, when you, obviously, I want to call you in for the high frequency data implementation, because that is where you're going to receive a real-time information for your CO2 emission and possibility to know and watch the implication real-time for individual vessels and for the entire fleet. And when basically how these technologies could be helpful, naturally most of technologies available today will ensure that you will comply with the regulations. But also, if you watch back to the economical factor, like how it could help you to save money or to earn more money from point of view of fuel savings and CO2 emission reduction, here are some ideas how much each of the available technologies could bring you in terms of savings. This is it. Thank you very much for your attention. 감사합니다.
Thank you very much. You already learned Korean. That's impressive. Yeah. I think we don't have much time, but can we take a couple of questions or?
I think we have time for one.
One
Yes.
question. One question.
Unfortunately, just one question.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we could maybe ask. I heard from the decarbonization that the timeline is very tight, and we need to act now. What is the concern? What are the concerns with this tight deadline? Why are we so concerned about the tight schedule, tight deadline? Maybe you, Jeppe, will you say something about that?
Yes, thank you. Thank you. It's a very good question. And I think the tight deadline...
The sound is a little bit low, Jeppe, if you wait a second.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
I try to...
Now it's good.
I hope thank you. Okay, the tight deadline is actually an issue because everybody are fully aware of the regulation coming in force by 1st January 24. But the problem in this regard may be that the administrations to establish the maritime single window in due time, they will rush to solutions which are developed independently, meaning that we will not have a solution which fits shipping in general, meaning that we will have a lot of different systems, lot of different solutions which cannot speak to each other, if I may use that phrase, or interact. And that is an issue and a huge problem, because we have a time where we can gain momentum in digitalization, but if we pass it because we develop different solutions and not harmonized solutions, interoperable solutions, then we will end up in a situation even worse than we have today.
Right. We can take one more question? Yes, one more. You mentioned many times that S211, that is developed by IALA, especially Michael Bergman, who's here, has worked a lot with that. And that's a very important thing in this decarbonization. And what do you actually think is necessary for the efficient information exchange between ship and port? That is very much to the heart of IALA, this information exchange.
Yeah, okay. I think many discussions are going on about data standard for sharing information. There are standards of IALA, ISO, as well as reference data model from IMO compendium. However, I think there is still lack of discussion about the sending, receiving procedures of service or service format for sharing data. Although ISO standard uses the contents of MQTT to define the information exchange method on board, I do not think it will be easy to apply this framework to information exchange between ships and ports. I mentioned in my presentation that the standard of IALA, ISO, IMO, and so need to be harmonized. This harmonization need to include not only data format, but also information exchange procedure. S211 is the data format. We need the procedure to utilize S211 between ships and ports. So I think we have no time, but I still requires a lot of technical effort to make the international standard to exchange information, and in the viewpoint of procedures and services. It's my answers, yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much. And believe me, we have tried to harmonize. But it's very, very difficult when you have more than one international organization working on this. Everybody asks for coordination, but nobody wants to be coordinated. That is the big question here. So thank you very much. I think we have to end here. Is that right?
Yes, unfortunately. I'm very sorry, but I think that we're already a little bit late on time. So thank you once again. Ladies and gentlemen, please give them a big round of applause. Thank you. And thank you once again for Mr. Jeppe Juul for joining us online as well. You may now return to your seats. We do have a very short break before we resume with our next session. I will be able to give you about 10 minutes of a break, ladies and gentlemen. Before we do break, however, please give in your business cards to our organizers, because we have a surprise event for you before our next session. So once again, we would like to kindly ask you to please give in your business cards. We have a raffle and a surprise gift for you. So please send in your business cards. Thank you. And we will resume at 4:20 p.m., just a 10-minute break, and then we will resume together for our next session. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll now begin our second session. I would like to bring our moderator and our panelists up onto the stage. So we will have a session opening by our moderator, which will be our section chief of the Ministry of Oceans and Fisheries, Mr. Hong Sun-bae. Please welcome him with a big round of applause. And our panel discussants, please also join us up on stage as well. Please join us. Thank you. And please welcome them with a big round of applause. Thank you very much.
Yes, welcome all of you to our session 2. So under the title of International Standard of Maritime Digitalization and also the sharing platform. I understand that in the former session 1, they talking about some kind of importance of interoperability of the maritime digitalization as the core keys to implement in near future. So while they talking about the interoperability and the harmonization is important in the maritime sector to implement the digitalization. Our sessions, I believe that we can talk about some kind the mechanism to solve the problem, how to achieve such kind of goals of ensuring the interoperability and also the harmonization across the world technology developed by each regions, like the European side and also the Asian side together. This is a very key element and core elements to facilitate the implementing the digitalization of the world. So our session has totally 6 speakers and 2 speakers from the Korean side and 4 speakers from the overseas. So we have 2 speakers in person in the stage, and also we have another 4 speakers online. So I believe that 4 speakers online will be now standby. So I want to check the speaker first. The Stepan Pierre-Mir, are you there now?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, thank you. You are very clear and loud. Please stand by. Please waiting for my talking to you. And next one is Thomas Christensen. Mr. Thomas Christensen, are you there now?
Yes, I'm here.
Yes, Thomas. Yeah, very good morning over there. And also Anders Wenders from the neighboring from the European side. Anders, are you there?
Good morning, good morning.
Yeah, good morning. Please continue joining us for your presentation, also Q&A session. And also lastly, the Miss Gillian Carson-Jackson.
Yes, I am here. Good evening.
Yeah, good evening. Hi. Gillian, nice to meet you here. So thank you.
It's nice to see you.
Okay, thank you so much. Yeah. So actually, the last 2 speakers, the Miss Gillian Carson-Jackson was the past president of the Nautical Institute, and she's going to provide us some kind of mechanism as a solution to solve or ensure the interoperability or harmonization of the maritime digitalization through the international cooperation together. And also the Thomas Christensen as the Secretary General of the Maritime Connectivity Platform, so-called MCP Consortium, the Secretary General is going to show some kind of benefits the ships can get from this MCP platform on board the ships. It would be very good chance for shipping community to understand what kind of benefits they can get from the maritime digitalizations. And the other one is the Anders Andreas went there from NavLink. NavLink is a consortium composing of the major private IT enterprises based in the European side, or Brazil or something like that. So it's very interested in, as the MCP instances, the practically operated by the private sector. So I believe that Andreas can provide us some kind of good way to ensure the harmonization or interoperability among the private sector systems as well as the public sector system, like the Korea, the smart navigation. And Mr. Yong-Baek from IHO, he's actually belonging to the Korean hydrographic agencies, but for the time being, his second is to the IHO as the expert of the maritime common data structure, the S100 standard is a very important key issue in the maritime digitalization. And lastly, the Dr. Seung, he is working in the KRISO. He's going to show us some kind of standardization in the A2N data exchange. This is very important in terms of the seamless services or resilience or PNT in the maritime digitalization. So I expect he's talking about such kind of standards to ensure some kind of data exchange through the A2N system, like the radar, beacons, or the BRIDS, or some kind of communication network. Okay, so as I told you just now, I'm expecting some solution to ensure the interoperability and also the harmonization among the systems under the name of the e-navigation or maritime digitalization across the regions, European side and Asian side. This session can find some kind of good discussion or some solution or future direction to ensure such kind of good key elements. So I'm going to start with the first speaker from the Stenula. I'm sorry, I just missed the introduction of the Stenula. Stefan Piermi, I'm sorry, apologize. So Stenula is the very important enterprise, new enterprise, satellite network provider operators. So they are now, I believe that the BRIDS satellite service is in progress for the time being. So this would be very useful tools to provide a seamless services across the continental or across the region. So we are going to listen to the first speaker, Stefan Pierre from the Stenula. So focusing on the BRIDS satellite service or something like that. Stefan, are you ready?
I'm ready, thank you. Can you see my presentation that I'm sharing?
Yes, we are now sharing your presentation. Go ahead.
Wonderful, Sumbai. Thank you very much for inviting me today and giving me that nice presentation of my person. So now I would like to talk about VDES and standardization status. And I'm personally the CTO and also founder of the company called Stenula. If you want to contact me, you have my email down there. Just a second. Yes. Very shortly, the background of VDES. I'm not sure if everybody is aware of that technology. Now, we are not in harmonization of data formats right now. We are into the transport of these digitalized data formats. So how do we get a S100 document from shore to ship and back from ship to shore or between ships? So VDES is one possible solution for that. It's derived from the good old AIS, Automatic Identification System, which today provides us with the information about position, speed, and heading, and so on. A lot of more details for every ship around the globe, virtually every ship. So what is VDES then? I tend on marketing terms calling VDES for AIS to zero, so it's more or less a kind of natural evolution of AIS. It uses a lot of the same technologies, but it adds a lot of extra transfer capabilities. So now this today is just a 9-minute slot if we give time for some questions, so I cannot go into all the details, but the purpose of VDES is to allow, and not only by satellite as here on the picture, but also terrestrially, to transport public services. So that would be IMO, e-navigation services, but it would also allow to transport services that allow for harbor booking and optimization services, for route optimization, weather optimization, and so on. So it's not only about safety. VDES can also be used for these more, you could call, commercial services, but in the end these all contribute that shipping is more efficient, and by that also less CO2 polluting. So that far for the motivation why we do it. So what's the solution? Well, the solution in VDES is to connect with satellites, with shore coast stations. I need to see if I can move my mouse, yes. With shore coast stations and with other ships through the existing AIS VHF antenna on board of the ship, but exchanging the existing AIS equipment with a new AIS 2.0 equipment, so that is a VDES equipment, allowing to exchange ship to ship, ship to shore, and ship to shore, the one via coastal, the other one via satellite. So now you understand what technology we talk about. I would like to talk about which standards are right now ready and which ones are in evolution. So if you want to participate in that standardization, you here with this presentation have a key on whom to ask, where to go, and also where to read about this technology. First of all, we needed radio spectrum. This is a radio communication technology, so we need frequencies. And many of you probably know by now that the ITU radio regulations in its Appendix 18, I should have written that here, in the edition of 2020 allocates spectrum to VDES. So that is a check mark, that's done. Next one is we need to agree, harmonize on how to use these frequencies in order to generate a harmonized way that all countries of the world can use the technology and all ships of the world can listen to these transmissions or do transmissions in a way so that shore authorities in all countries would be able to understand the protocols that are used by the telecommunication standard. And the related document is ITURM 2092-1, so that's a new edition. And we have that since February 2022 officially available on ITU's homepage. So that's a check mark. Well, now you say, oh, but maybe we made some mistakes and we need to clarify something or we need to correct something. It's a very new standard. So yes, this is planned. Of course, we need to open up for corrections if we find some mistakes, or mostly I think it's potential points that can be explained better. And in ITU, such an update is only possible after 2 years, so earliest in 2024. And one way to collect inputs to the document is to participate in IALA ENAF, where Working Group 3, the comms working group, that's where I'm chairman, is collecting input currently. So we are collecting input, but of course it's an ITU document, so countries can also contribute input to ITU directly. However, pre-coordination is a good thing because then potential clarifications can be taken outside of ITU, which is much faster and easier process. Well, now we know how to use the radio link. Now we need an equipment standard that is typical, at least in maritime radio communication equipment, and IEC is working right now on that one. It's IEC TC80, Working Group 15, led by Stefan Bober. There is existing a working draft, and this is taking care of the three main elements that VDES is adding to AIS, that is ASM, VDE terrestrial and VDE satellite for ship and shore equipment. So if you want to contribute to the industry standard, test standard for VDES, it's IEC TC80. You may change, but I'm having a working symbol here because we are still working on it. IEC documents have a long delivery time, so my personal expectation is 24-25. For this document to be in a state where it can be used for equipment tests. Participation, please contact your local TC80 representative. IEC is very strict on that. Then we have a document. Well, let's say we have equipment, we have radio frequencies and so on. So now we need to know actually what can we use it for. And there is a very good document that is right now under update, and that's IALA G1117. It's called the VDES Overview. I would call it also maybe use cases in parentheses. And we are right now updating all the use cases, very detailed use cases in that document, and also explain how these use cases can be achieved by use of VDES. So if you want to contribute to the document, please join IALA ENAV Working Group 3 here in end of September. I think that's the week after next week. And we will all meet in Saint-Germain to work on that document. And it's actually planned to be finished here in October, the work. And then, of course, Council needs to approve it before it's on the homepage. So work in progress, but very close to being ready to explain you all what can VDES actually do for you. Well, this document has also a very important purpose, and that is to help writing the IMO performance standard. And that standard should, that performance standard and the work of changing SOLAS Chapter 4 and 5 is scheduled to be, let's say, started in IMO NCSR 10, so that's next year, where we all hope that input papers go to NCSR on that topic to provide a way for VDES to be a recognized instrument by IMO. Okay, this work is obviously ongoing, and as far as I'm aware of, Japan is tasked with that, with chairing that work. So when we talk about using VDES, we talked about the TC80 working group 15 is working on a test standard, but this group also developed an international VDE application identifier. And that is like in ASM, it's a part of 1371-5, a kind of header information that tells everybody who listens to VDES transmissions what kind of data is inside the binary information. So it's a header, and this header is defined now. It needs to be adopted. It needs to be broadly discussed. However, the experts working on the topic have made a good effort on proposing something here, and it can identify all the content. So from now on, you could say we can start sending UTF-8 text messages, for example, over VDES. We have a defined format how to do that, or we can send MCP, maritime messaging transport protocol messages through VDES, and a million different transport formats that you might want to choose. It's like in ASM, this will be an international process, so every country, every company and so on can propose formats. However, we need to remember harmonization is important, so let's try not to use all these millions of possibilities, but in order to be democratic, we also need to have the possibility that every country can propose own formats. So this is defined. It needs to be adopted, of course, as part of a recommendation or as part of a test standard to be discussed at IALA in 2 weeks, in fact, as one of the places. And then we need the data formats. And how do we transport a S100 document, for example, from shore to a ship in a way so we enable all the trust we know from the maritime connectivity platform. And that's a very important standard to tell us how to pack such formats in order to transport them over VDES. And in fact, the MCP has a maritime messaging service working group, and this working group, I'm also having the honor to participate there, is working on a protocol that can transport, I say it simple, S100 and other digital data over VDE terrestrial, satellite, and also over IP connections. So roaming between VDES and IP connections, 4G, 5G, whatever you choose to trust on board of the ship, is under preparation. This is work in progress. We have sent a first draft to RTCM Special Committee 121 already in June this year. And our target is, I would say, ambitious. End of 22, we want to have the whole standard described. It's not that complicated. So it should be a quite simple protocol that allows us to link the world of S100 and harmonized information exchange. And it's not only S100. If we find something else in the future, it can also be transported over that. It's digital data transport in a fully trusted way with heterogeneous networking over IP networks that could be satellite or terrestrial and over VDES. So if you want to participate there, it's the Maritime Connectivity Consortium or Navilink that can give you an entry ticket to that standardization. Work in progress. All this is shown in a picture here. I don't want to use your time to explain everything once more, but I think it's a nice picture developed in my working group. Here you have it. It's all the kind of input information that we use and all the standards that are expected to be an outcome of that. First of all, for VDES specifically in the context of IMO, and then specifically for the service architecture where we have the Maritime Connectivity Consortium and the MMS integrated. MMS is only one way to use VDES. It's also possible to use VDES directly without the layer of MMS, but then harmonization is a big question, of course. Outlook. So when can we start to use VDES on ship and shore? Well, I'm coming with examples here. There's probably others. For example, there is the Saab R6 VDES unit available from the 1st of November. You can just go somewhere and buy it. And this unit is a fully approved AIS, type approved AIS, so you can mount it on a ship and replace your old AIS with it. But it can also be used for VDES testing according to 2092-1 today. And that enables you to do pilot testing or to transport services that do not require IMO approval of these means of transport. I may say that Estonia bought a complete shore-based station for their complete shoreline, so several shore-based stations that are VDES compatible. So it's happening out there. That's what I want to tell you with this one. So yes, you can buy equipment. Installation is possible. And of course, you can use it for non-safety related services and trials right now. So what do we need to do it with the satellite? Well, my company is providing you with VDE sat coverage more or less worldwide for test purposes and your first trials. So that's available, and we are using an early version of this maritime messaging service protocol to demonstrate that. So then we need to expect IMO to recognize VDES as an instrument, as I told you, starting in 2023-24. When they are ready, we cannot know as we sit here, so that's work in progress. And then we will have a test standard ready by 24-25. And after these two things have happened, then we can use VDES also for IMO e-navigation services, so that's for safety-related services. Finally, if you want to ensure harmonization of VDES equipment up to the point where we have a ready test standard, there is the VDES Alliance, which is finally inaugurated now, and it's possible to join the VDES Alliance from October, so that's next month. And there is the goal to test interoperability of equipment on provisional test baselines until we have the final test baseline, of course, and then it would be notified bodies doing that job. And I think that finishes my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Stefan, for your presentations. I briefly, very short questions about your presentation. You're talking about the VDES coverage from 2023. So how many satellites for your VDES services could be provided from 2023?
In 2023, we have one satellite. However, it's a low-flying satellite, and that means that it can cover the whole world, but not real time. So that means that in some areas close to the equator, we would have 2 visits per day, and some areas more in the Arctic, we would have, of course, up to 16 visits per day.
Yeah, thank you. I believe that your service will be a good item to be tested, that providing the seamless service across the region from Asia to Europe. So I hope that you can join this kind of initiative, so-called global digital road test bed in your future. I will be very appreciated for your continuous joining our session for the Q&A session until the other speakers finish their presentation. Thank you. And our next speaker is Mr. Yong-Baek from the IHO. He's going to show some kind of roadmap of implementing the S100 standards and electronic chart or something like that. Are you ready, Mr. Baek?
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you very much. It is actually my pleasure to be here at Digital SC Asia Pacific Conference. This is my third participation, but however, it is the first as a representative of International Hydrographic Organization. Before that, I was, as introduced by Mr. Hong, I was working for the Korean Hydrographic Agency, but since the last more than 2 years, I moved to the IHO as a technical assistant director. So my main role is to support, to develop the technical field in terms of the S100. So nowadays, today, I will briefly introduce what IHO installed the roadmap for implementing S100. But moving to the presentation, having a consideration of the participant here in person, I would say present in Korean because of I would like to deliver my presentation is more precisely to the participant here in the participation in person. If you're not maybe have any against or observation or against on my proposal. 네, 그럼 지금부터 한국말로 진행을 하도록 하겠습니다. IHO에 대해서 간략하게 말씀드리면 많이 언급을 들으셔서 알겠지만 IHO는 기본적으로 항해 안전하고 해양 환경 보호에 관련한 표준과 기술 개발을 업무를 담당하고 있습니다. 생긴 지는 약 100년이 넘었고요. 작년에 100주년 행사를 했고요. 기본적으로 다른 여러 분야도 있지만 오늘 행사하고 관련돼서는 표준, 특히 수로 분야에 관련된 표준을 개발하고
IHO develops and maintains standards related to
hydrographic affairs.
지금 보시는 슬라이드가 S백에 대해서
This
아주
slide
간략한
briefly
개념을
explains the concept
설명하기
of
위해서 준비를 했는데요.
S100.
S백이 무엇이냐라는
What is
생각을
S100?
가졌던 분들이 지금은 이제 아니겠지만 가졌던
Before,
분들이
there were some
많았고요.
people who asked
S백이라는
this
거를
question,
조금 더
what is
단순화시켜서 표현을
S100? But
하자면
nowadays, more
저희가
people
지금
have better
해양이나 해사
understanding
관련된
on this.
부분에서 종이 해도를
In
아직도
maritime
사용을 하고
industry,
있고
many
아직도 다양한 분야의
stakeholders are
사용자들이
using
있습니다.
paper
하지만
nautical
종이
chart.
해도에서 디지털 기반의 전자 해도로
We are
2012년부터
From
이관이
2012,
시작됐고요.
we started moving from
2017년부터는
paper
선박의
nautical
모든
chart
솔라스
to
선박에서
electronic nautical
액티스가
chart,
강제
and all
탑재가 됐고 그
Solas
의미는 항해 때
ships
항해
are
시
equipped with
전자 해도를
actis. That's a mandatory
사용을 하게
thing.
됐습니다.
During
이게 현재
navigation,
저희가
they have
지금
to
현재
use
상황이고요.
electronic
회사에서
nautical
그리고
chart.
해양 관련된 분야에서 디지털
In the
정보를
maritime and
사용을 하고
shipping
있다. 하지만 이
sector,
디지털 정보라는 게 종이
they are using
해도에서
digital
전자
information.
해도로 변환된
But
거지 전자
it's
해도
just
형태의
like
데이터를
there
의미하는
was
것은
just a
아닙니다.
simple change from paper charts to
S100은 무엇이냐 하면 단순히
electronic
종이
charts.
해도의 정보를
S100 is more
디지털화하여
than
전자 해도로
this.
제공하는 것이 아니라
S100
그거
is
이상의
not just about
실시간
providing
정보라든지
paper
기상
information
정보
in
앞에서
digital
여러
form, but
연사분들이
it
얘기했지만
includes
회사에 필요한
more
다양한 디지털
diverse
정보를
digital
선박에 혹은
information
육상에서 육상으로
which
전송을 할 수
will be
있도록
transferred
제공을 하는
to
개념이라고
the
할 수
ship
있습니다.
from the shore or from
IHO가 S100 표준
from the
기술을
ship to
개발을
the shore.
2010년부터 시작을 했고요.
IHO
지금 약
started
12년 정도
developing
시간이 흘렀는데
S100
상당 부분
from
주요
standards
핵심
from
기술은 거의 개발이
for
됐고
about
지금 테스트 중에
10
있습니다.
years.
그래서
And
IHO는 향후
some of the
10년간
concept is
어떻게
undergoing
S100을
testing.
실제 적용을 해서
For
서비스를
the
할 수
next 10
있는지
years,
그에 대한
we will have to see how we
주요한
can
요구사항을
apply
고려를 했고요. 그에
S100
따라서
into the
10개년
actual
계획을
maritime
수립했습니다.
service.
로드맵
This is what
IHO의
we thought
로드맵을
in
보시면
2020,
크게
and so
메인
we
다큐멘트
established
로드맵에
this
대한 기본 설명을
roadmap
하는 메인
for
다큐멘트가
S100
있고요. 그다음에 세
implementation
개의
decade.
안넥스로
It
구성이
has
되어 있습니다.
documents like these and
메인
three
다큐멘트는 크게
annex.
7가지 요소로 구성이
There
되어
are
있습니다.
7
그중에서
elements in the main document.
첫 번째가
The first
S100 인프라에
element
대한
is
부분인데요.
the
S100의
S100
S100이
infrastructure.
기존의 S57 다른 디지털 데이터와의 큰 차이점 중에 하나는
One of the difference between
플러그 앤
S100
플레이가
and
가능하다는
S57 is that
플러그 앤
S100
플레이가
enables
가능하다는 게
plug
무슨
and
새로운
play.
기술이냐라고 할 수
What
있지만
is new
회사
about plug
분야에서
and play?
플러그 앤
In the
플레이를
maritime
개념을
sector,
도입하고
the
이로
concept
인해서
of plug and
IHO뿐만
play
아니라 회사와
is
관련된
adopted.
업무를 담당하는 유사 국제기구 기관들이
And
동일한
not only
컨셉으로
IHO but also
데이터를
other international
교환하고 서로 사용할 수 있다는
organizations related
것에서
to
큰
maritime
장점이 있습니다.
affairs will be
플래그램
able
플레이라는
to
것은
use
기계가
and share
사람의
data
간섭
in
없이도
the
표준을
consistent
스스로
form.
읽고
Plug and
그
play means
표준대로
that it
정보를
can
화면에
read the
표출할 수
standards
있는
itself
것입니다.
without the
그래서
help of
이렇게
human
S100의
and display
컨셉을
the
적용하기
information on
위해서는
the
S100
screen.
관련된 인프라를
To
IHO가
enable this
개발해서
concept, we
지속적으로
have
운영을 해야
to
된다는
develop and
원칙이
maintain
정해졌고요.
the
그에
S100
따라서
operational
IHO가 지금
infrastructure.
계속해서 S100 관련된
So
표준을 개발을 하고
IHO
있습니다. 이
is
표준 개발에 대한
continuously
타임라인은
developing the
뒷장에서
relevant
좀
standards,
더 자세히
and I will share
설명드리고요.
with you the timeline
그리고
in the
S100의
other
실제
slides.
서비스가 저희가 2026년부터
And from
서비스를 데이터
2026,
서비스를 한다고 계획을
S100
하고
data
있는데요.
service will
이게
begin
과연
according to
모든
our
회원국이
plan.
전 세계 모든 회원국이 어떻게 일시적으로 데이터 S100
Then
데이터를
how
생산할 수 있겠느냐?
Can we
라는
help
걱정이
the member
있었습니다.
countries
그래서
across the
이러한
world
걱정의
to
솔루션의
be
일부로
ready
현재의
to
S57
use the
정보를
use and
S101로
produce
변환해서
S100
서비스화할 수 있는 것에 대한
services
가이드가 포함이 되어
from
있고요.
2026. So
네
we
번째는
created the relevant guideline.
전자해도가 그다음에 수로 관련된 정보가
The fourth
DIS에
component of
탑재를 하게 되는데
this
이게 탑재와
roadmap
관련된
is
IMO의 레귤레이션이 어떻게 상호
we will
협조가
achieve
돼서
synchronization
IMO의
with
스탠다드
IMO.
퍼포먼스 스탠다드에
For
적용이 될
example,
수 있는지에 대한 부분이고 이
how
부분은
can
조금 더 나중에 다시
S100
설명을 드리겠습니다.
be applied
다섯
to
번째
the
부분은
active performance standards
모든
defined
회원국들이
by
회원국뿐만
IMO?
아니라 데이터를 생산하는
The fifth
가맹자들이
component
데이터를
is that
만들기 위해서는
all the
툴이
member
있어야 됩니다.
countries
디지털 데이터를
and
만들기
industry
위해서는 디지털 툴이
stakeholders
필요하고요.
need
그러한
a
디지털
digital
툴을
tool.
툴이 어떻게 준비가 되어야 하는지에 대한 부분.
So the
그다음에 여섯
fifth element
번째는
explains
가장
how the
중요한 것 중에 하나가
industries
이제
should prepare
교육에
the
대한
digital
부분입니다.
tools.
새로운
The
기술과
sixth
새로운 표준이
element is
나왔을 때
about
실제
education
사람이
and
어떻게 데이터를
training.
제작하고
When
마켓에 서비스할 수
S100
있는지에 대한
standards come
일곱
up,
번째가 사실
then how
제일 마지막이면서 제일
then we
중요한
should
것
be
중에
able
하나가
to
모든
apply
기술과
and
모든 교육이
utilize
다
them.
되어
So
있다
capacity
하더라도
building is
전 세계를
important.
커버하는
The
데이터가
seventh
없으면
component is that
실제 마켓에서 그만큼 원하는 대로
in the
영향
market,
그런 제대로 역할을 할 수가 없습니다. 그래서 웬드 100이라는 새로운 원칙을
the
IHO에서
seventh
수립해서
element is
회원국들의 구에
related to
따라서
WEND 100
데이터를 기간 내에
principles,
제작하도록
so
그렇게
that the
독려를 하고
member
있습니다.
countries can
이 부분은
prepare
그
the
부속서에
relevant
포함되어
data
있는 건데요.
under
IHO가
S100
IHO의
standards
S100이
in a
단순히
timely manner.
IHO의 수로 데이터
And
표준만을 만드는 것이 아니라 IALA에서
here
하는 200
describes that
시리즈의 데이터도 S100을 기반으로 한 거고요.
200 series data
IEC의
is also
표준
based on
성능 기준도
S100,
S100을 기반으로 한 장비들이
and
개발이
ISO
돼서 활용할 수
standards
있도록
equipment
관련된 표준을 함께 개발을
could
하고
also be
있고요.
based on
지원도 하고요.
S100 standards.
그다음에
That's
인랜드
why
ENC라고 수료
in the
내륙수로
Annex 1, we're
위원회에서도
saying that we will
내륙수로
collaborate
위원회,
with
전자해독
IMO and other
그리고
relevant organizations.
S131이라는 항만 인프라라는 새로운 표준도
And there is a
지금
new
개발을 해서
standard
다양한 위원회들하고
131, which is related to the
기구들하고
port
S100
infrastructure.
관련된 표준을 서로 상호
So
개발하고 협력을
we
하고
are
있습니다.
developing
그중에 최근 이제
S100 standards
업데이트된
through
사항 중에
cooperation with
하나가요.
many
저희가
relevant
NCSR 9
organizations.
9차 회의 올해 6월에
Recently,
연단에서 개최된 9차 회의에
in June, we
IMO의
held
그 액티스
meeting
성능 표준
where we
개정안을
discussed the
여러
performance
그룹들과
standards improvement
드래프팅 그룹을
idea.
만들어서 초안을 제출했고요. 그 초안이 NCSR 9에서
And the
통과가
draft
됐습니다.
was
그리고
submitted
올해
and it
하반기에 개최
actually passed the
예정인
meeting.
MSC
In the
106차
second
회의에
half
승인이
of the
되면
year,
이제 실제 적용을
106
하게 되는데요.
NSC
이
meeting will be
타임라인에서
held.
가장 중요한 부분 중에
In this
하나가
timeline, the most
액티스 S100
important
액티스라는
thing
새로운
is that
액티스의 탑재가 2022년 1월 1일부터 지금 시작이 되는 것으로 NCSR 라인에서 통과가
in
됐습니다.
the NCSR
MSC
line,
회의에서 특별한 이견이 없으면
if there's no
신규
opposition
선박되는
from
건조되는
MSC
선박의
meeting,
액티스는 S100 액티스를
actives
탑재하도록
on newly
하고요.
built
그러한
ships
액티스
will be
탑재는
the new
2029년 1월
actives.
1일까지입니다. 이제 전환 기간 동안이고요. 2029년, 2020년, 2029년 1월 1일 이후에 건조되는
And
신규 선박은
new ships
새로운
that
S100
are
액티스를
built
이제
after
탑재해야 합니다.
January 2029 will have to be
액티스를
equipped
탑재해서고
with
되는 건
new
아니고요. 액티스에
actives.
당연히 들어갈 정보가 있어야
Mounting
되겠죠. 그래서
actives is not
IHO에서는
everything about this.
정보의 S100 기반으로 한 다양한 제품 중에서
There will
항해
be many
모니터링에
products
해당하는
based on
부분의
S100.
표준 개발을 우선시하고요.
And we
그에
put
대한 정보도
priority
먼저 제작을
on
하도록 그렇게
developing
독려를 하고 있습니다.
the standards and products for navigational route monitoring mode.
최근에 IHO에서 지금 개정을 했고요.
Recently,
7월 12일자 새로 업데이트된
amended
그
this
S100
plan.
표준 및 제품 생산 계획입니다. 현재
This
저희가 지금
roadmap is
2022년
as of
9월에
July
있는데요.
2022.
S100
Now it's
새로운
September
S100 5.0 버전이
2022.
지금 IHO
New
회원국 승인을
S100 version
지금 회람 중에
5.5
있고요. 이게
are
통과가
now
되면
being
올해
circulated
말부터
among member
새로운
countries
S100
for
표준이
approval.
이제 발표가
If
돼서
all member
S100 새로운
countries
표준에 기반으로 한
agree
이제 제품
with this,
표준들이 전부 다
then
업데이트 될
from
수
the end
있도록
of
지금
this
독려를
year,
하고 있습니다.
we will be able to
가장
see
이제
more progress
저희가
so that
눈여겨볼 것
the
중에 하나는
there will be update in the
S101이라는
S100
항해의
product
가장 기본이 되는
specification.
기본 정보는
And the very
2024년까지
basic
표준 개발을
navigational
완료를 할
information
계획이고요.
under
2024년부터
will be
가맹국들이 서서히
developed by
하나씩 한 국가씩
2024.
이제 새로운 전자해도를 제작해서
And member
유통을 시킬
countries will
계획으로 하고
gradually
있습니다.
produce new electronic nautical chart, which will be gradually
앞서
penetrated
말씀드렸던
across the
그
member
요소 중
countries.
7번째 요소인 웬드 웬드 원칙이 있는데요. 웬드
And
원칙은
this is
언급했듯이
WEND
고품질의
100 principle.
오피셜한 데이터를
Purpose of WEND 100
글로벌하게 사용할 수
principle
있도록
is to ensure
그렇게
that high quality
독려를 하는
and
그런
updated
원칙입니다.
official nautical and
지금 현재
hydrographic
전자해 S57 전자해도도
S100-based
그
product
원칙이 있는데요.
could be used and
그 원칙은
penetrated
뭐냐면
across the world.
가맹국 간에 서로 데이터를 조화롭게 오버랩되지 않게 전 세계 글로벌한 커버리지를 제공해야 한다라는 아주 기본적인 원칙이고요. 그 유사한 원칙을 IMO의 새로운 그 퍼포먼스 스탠다드에 따라서
And according
단순히
to
전자해도뿐만
IMO's
아니라
performance
다른
standards,
S백 기반의
not only
가맹국도
electronic
전 세계를
nautical chart, but
커버하는
also other
데이터들이
S100-based
제작돼서
data
공급될
or
수 있도록
data
이렇게 원칙을 세워서 한국들한테
should
독려를
be
하고 있습니다.
widely developed and distributed across the world.
네, 이상입니다. 감사합니다.
This will be all for my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Youngbaek. Your presentation is very useful. I clearly understand what is S100 and how the standard is applicable to the navigation service. So briefly, I want to make a question to Mr. Baek. So you update some information on the S100 active system after the IAMA MSC 106 approved the modification of the regulation. So you mean the S100 actis is the actis that can support S100 electronic navigation chart and S100 data exchange, right?
Yeah, you're right. So that I mentioned that after 2026, I mean that is the starting point for the transition anyway. But new S100 actis has to have capability to receive S100 data set and then display S100 data set. I said the S100 data set, not only S101. So S100 data set means we identified two groups. One is the route monitoring, the other one is route planning. So belonging to the route monitoring, there is S101, electronic chart, S102, bathymetric chart, bathymetric surface. S104 is the water level, S111 is surface current, and some others. So only 5 or 6 is post priority. And the next one maybe will be applied for the next.
Yeah, so I'm making this question because you're talking about the very important target time of 2026 regarding the S100, the standard. So this is very critical to the smart navigation. The Korean ministry is now implementing their navigation service to their domestic vessels, as you know. So they also use the official electronic chart published by the hydrographic agencies. So is there some kind of differences that the ministry is using the S100 standard navigation chart published by the hydrographic at the moment, and the standard you mentioned the target time, the 2026. What do you expect? Is there some kind of serious changes in the standard?
No, so that I mentioned the priority product specification, that most of that products has now edition 1, the published. That edition 1 is on the testing and experimentation phases. So now, they're testing the S100 products. That means the next edition, I mean that after the 2024 or 2026, is not gonna huge changes. It's the same core, the technique now we have, but a little bit adjust what we are testing or some result from the testing, something like that.
So I hopefully believe so, because the Korea is one of the country who carried out the demonstration project of the IHO to develop the S100 electronic navigation chart. So the smart navigation is based on such kind of technology. So of course, there should be some kind of minor modification if necessary, but the major trend is in line with the smart navigation in terms of the S100. Yeah, thank you for your confirmation. And this is an administrative announcement. We are to have some coffee break during our session, but I don't think that is a good method for us to convene this session, because now 4 speakers online from overseas is waiting for our Q&A session same together. So if we have some coffee break during the session, it would be not fair to them. Also, we can lose our temp or speed or connection among the speakers like this. So if you allow me to proceed continuously without coffee break, rather then you can have some coffee. Please feel free to go and out the conference room to pick up the coffee if you want by yourself. But I'd like to continue the speaker's presentation without coffee breaks. So you can enjoy your coffee if you want during the presentation. So I'm going to move the next speakers, Dr. Seung Oh. He is from the KRISO, the Korean Institute regarding the ocean part, as one of the very important key institute to develop the Korean e-navigation and also digitalization in the maritime sector. So he's going to update some kind of standardization in the A to N data exchange. Dr. Oh, you can go ahead.
Yes. Hello, my name is Seung Oh, working for KRISO. Today, topic is my presentation about standard development on A-ton data exchange. I'm present about marine data digitalization in the scope of A-ton exchange. I mean data exchange between A-ton office and hydrograph office, which is show-to-show service, which is kind of data format about show-to-show, required for show-to-show service. Yeah, this is contents. This is background. As you know well, A-ton is one of essential. A-ton information is essential for marine navigation. So if you look into the Notice Mariner, the A-ton information is a majority of Notice Mariner. So I think A-ton information is important and core in nautical chart and Notice Mariner and for our set navigation. And despite many needs, there was no A-ton standard in IALA. So IALA tried to develop A-ton information standard from early 2010. So IALA started to develop the standard using the S100 framework and approved that edition 1 in 2019. So the IALA Council approved the edition 1 and the ARM committee meeting improving the A-ton standard, because that is the purpose for testing. So the group improving the A-ton standard. So in this slide, this is a use case for exchanging A-ton data between relevant organizations. So within A-ton domain, there are need to exchange A-ton information between A-ton monitoring system and information system. Also, there are some scenario about on that between regional office and central office. So this is scenario of within A-ton domain. And in addition to that, between ATON office and hydrographic office, there are many exchange about ATON data. But at the moment, we distribute ATON changes, ATON information by paper, not digital. So in order to overcome the challenge, the IALA developed ATON information standard. So in order to develop the standard, some special task group was organized under the working group 2 of ARM committee. The group was tasked to develop and update the standard. So because this is about this standard, including all information about ATON, so the buoy and lighthouse and light and the tarmac and so on, beacon, radar, raycon, all kind of ATON is included in the standard. So the group developed the version 1 based on the initial requirement from IALA members, and the data model, regarding the data model, is from the S57 ENG product specification. And the group aimed to develop and draft the new version. The version is 1.1.0. So the group will submit this new version to the next ARM meeting. Maybe in the future, the edition 2.0.0 will be improved according to the S101 ENG ATON data model. This is the overview of data model. So as I mentioned, basically ATON model consists of structure and equipment. There are many kinds of structure and equipment in the ATON data model. And the latest, last year and this year ARM meeting, we add more feature type like the structure, buoy, and mooring information, which is for maintenance and managing purpose. So this is overview of package of 201 standard product specification. There are main document and there are other components. This component is very useful for software developer to develop any kind of software or any create 201 ATON data set. So after approval of 201 version 1, so the group and IALA members cooperate with for testing 201 product specification. So for example, so the United Kingdom provides encoding tool, web-based encoding tool. So from the product specification, the test data set is important to understand and implement the product specification. So this is encoding tool of supporting the 201 data. And this is another tool to test the 201 test data set, which is similar with digital resolve life, but this tool enable testing and checking the detailed attribute of 201 data set. This is another the platform to cooperate with IALA members, which is a web-based 201 test bed. So through this web-based test bed, the IALA members exchange or share their test data set on 201 ATON data. So I will present the Korean the activity on 201 development. So Korea set up a plan to apply 201 standard, and we decided to make new system to manage ATON information. So the detailed information is different depending on the IALA member, national member. So we are focusing on we specify detailed ATON information according to 201 data model. So we make a design on ATON system based on 201 model. So this is our internal detail model. Some part is from the 201 model, and some part is from our model. So this new system supports issuing a 201 dataset and also support our maintenance purpose. This is example of lighthouse information, detailed information. So another important thing is MRN. So ATON consists of many parts, many information. So we are managing huge information for managing ATON system. So I think the unique identifier is important to manage and issue the 201 data, the service data. So as you know well, IALA developed the MRN guideline. So according to the IALA MRN guideline, we define the MRN syntax for our own ATON resource. So this is an example how we define MRN syntax, MRN number to manage our ATON information. So for the maintenance operation, we applied MRN concept to every process and every information. So this is a new interface for our ATON management system. So from this system, we can produce 201 data, and we can support any requirement for the marine digitalization. This is our plan. So we are developing the ATON Information Service Center. So we are gathering the ATON status, real-time ATON status information from the ATON system, and the main information center gathering all information. And we are doing the quality assurance for the database. And also we are considering the MCP to provide ATON maritime data. And the right side is expected recipient receiving system, but I think we need to discuss about the interface and process, how to apply the ATON data to the end user system. So from our new ATON management system, the ATON office start to discuss with hydrographic office. So from analog data to digital data. So we every week we issue 201 data, and the transfer to the hydrographic office by 201 standardized data set. So we discuss with hydrographic office, and we're testing the 201 and the process on exchanging ATON data set between two offices. So this is data flow of ATON related data. So last week we had joint workshop between IALA and IHO in Ålesund, Norway. So this diagram, data flow, is very new, very fresh one. And from the ATON information, we can expect many maritime service such as 201 and 124 and 125. So in the joint workshop, we agreed on the further discussion, and we will develop relevant guideline or standard. So this is summary. So IALA approved 201 edition 1 in 2019. So based on the 201, so we are developing the ATON data service, which is public-facing data standard. So we are developing this S124, 125 from the 201. And some national members of IALA are transitioning their ATON information system that can issue 201 ATON data. So this kind of activity will be the backbone to provide 8-ton data exchange and public-facing 8-ton data service. And marine data standard and maritime service for public-facing data have been developed for a long time. And as Chair mentions, S100 and Young mentions, S100 Actis will be implemented from 2016 optionally and from 2019 mandatory. So in order to enable a public-facing maritime data service, data exchange between shore organizations should be digitalized and standardized. So production, management, and exchange of marine data in shore office should be harmonized and organized. So it's recommended to raise interest in maritime data digitalization and standardization for shore-to-shore use case and to start discussion on how to proceed. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Oh. Your presentation is very interesting to me, even though I'm also Korean. So I'm also give you a very brief question on your presentation. You're talking about the A2N information service center you're talking about. So of course, I believe there are some common things between the A2N Information Service Center and the Korean Smart Navigation Center, for example, such as MRN, Marine Resource Names, and also they use the S100 data, the Maritime Common Data Structure. And also, I believe your the service center, A2N Service Center, is going to use the MCP, right? Yeah, so would you please explain how we can secure the interoperability and harmonization among this A2N Information Service Center and the smart navigations?
Regarding the service platform of A2N service, APM informations, we are considering the MCP, but the consideration is so early. We didn't investigate the detail how to introduce MCP for our purpose. So I think we need to discuss with two division how to harmonize by MCP. Yeah.
Yeah.
This could be answered.
Yeah, right. I believe the MCP is for the time being, as I understand that the MCP is a kind of vendor neutral platforms that each services can use to secure some kind of interoperability among the different platforms. So I believe that you should be discussed together with the relevant service platforms like the smart navigation, even the other platform regarding the logistics, maritime logistics, to avoid the future additional efforts to make a harmonization and interoperability. So I think your role is very important. And also your result will be a good model to show over the world how to achieve the interoperability among different systems. Okay, thank you. And next speaker is Mr. Thomas Christensen, the Secretary General of MCP Consortium. So Thomas, are you ready?
Yes, I am ready. Do you hear me?
Yeah, you are very clear and loud. I so missed you after I coming to the Singapore. You look so good now. Yeah, very good morning.
Thank you, Sunbei.
Yeah, okay.
And thank you very much for inviting me here. I'm sorry I couldn't be there in person. I certainly would like to have been, but not possible at this time.
Yeah.
But let me try to share my screen. Do you see my presentation? Is my presentation visible?
Yes, very clear. Go ahead.
Okay. All right, thank you very much. So I will be talking about the exchange of S100 data and the role of MCP in my presentation here. So, of course, the digitalization effort that we have been working on for many years, and also e-navigation, which I believe is pretty much the same thing, is about handling, visualization, and exchange of digital information. Pretty much like the old e-navigation definition that Mahesh showed in the beginning stated. So this is what we need to do. But I think the global community has been very much focused on data harmonization up to this point. And of course, that is good. We need data harmonization. That is absolutely necessary. And of course, what is happening there is the S100 scheme that is being used to create product specification. And we also heard about the IMO compendium, which is another source of harmonized data elements. But what we also need is to be able to exchange these data. And exchange is something that we also need to harmonize, and we need to do that in a smart way, using contemporary methods and contemporary technology, because there's a lot of ways we can exchange data that are not so clever. And one keyword here is services, because that's the way data is being exchanged in the IT world. Everybody has heard about service-oriented architecture, but services is also a very, very broad term that is being used for many things. So in this context of being able to exchange digital information, we are calling it technical services to try to narrow it a little bit down what we're talking about. So we need these technical services to allow the data exchange. And we need to do that in a generic way, so we can exchange data between A and B in a secure and reliable way. And A and B can, of course, be many things. It can be two shore-side organizations. It can be anything. What we need to include in who A and B is a shore authority, like, for instance, a VTS center, and a system on board a ship, for instance, an ECDIS. So there will be many different A's and B's, but this particular case where we have a shore authority and an ECDIS is important that we are also able to do that, because this is a very regulated area, and it requires more to do that, for instance, bring some information to a backbridge system of a vessel. So we need to be aware of that. The good thing is that over the course of many years and all the e-navigation effort that has been undertaken, we have arrived with a lot of guidelines, building blocks on how to do this, on how to make these technical services. On the very highest level, we have the maritime services that we know very well, that have been described over a number of years in IMO and the domain coordinating bodies for maritime services. And these maritime services are on a very high level, and they do not facilitate exchange of digital data. But the maritime services in the IMO description of these, they do refer to a number of associated technical services, which are the ones that facilitates this digital data exchange. And the technical services themselves, there's also a guideline that we can use on how to make specifications for the technical services. IALA has made a guideline called D1128 that describes how we can make these technical services. That complies with the template for technical services that exists in IMO documents. And of course, we've heard about the product specifications that will include the data model that is needed for the technical services, and the portrayal of how these are going to be visualized on different systems, for instance, and ECDIS. So these are very high-level, important building blocks that we have and have had for some time. Now, these elements here, maritime services, technical services, and product specifications, the relationship between these are described in an IMO resolution, MSC 467/101. And there's a nice drawing there where we can see these relationship. We have the maritime services on the highest level. Each maritime service references one or more technical services, and one maritime service can reference technical services from different domains. It's not one maritime service has its own set of technical services. It can be selected from the whole set of technical services. And the technical services themselves, they describe the exchange of data, but the data itself is described in a data model, which typically will be taken from different product specifications. And again, there's need not to be a one-to-one relationship between a technical service and a product specification. A technical service may create a data model that takes elements from different product specifications. Or the technical service could be using data models created from elements in the IMO compendium. That would also be perfectly possible. There are more building blocks. When we do this exchange of data, we need to be able to give identifiers to different things that we are exchanging. So there's a mechanism being made for that, which has also been mentioned before, the maritime resource names. And there's a guideline for that, and that has been adopted by IALA and IHO, and I think it's also beginning to pop up in IMO documents. So there's a guideline for how to make unique identifiers. The guideline I mentioned before for technical services is still very generic. It is for technical services, but it does not prescribe any specific technology. So since we are using internet technology in a greater and greater extent, it is beneficial to have a guideline that explains how to make a technical service that uses internet technology. For that purpose, we have IALA guideline D1157 that explains how to create a technical service using internet technology, and internet technology services there. They're called web services. So this guideline is about web services to facilitate S100 data exchange. And the last guideline here is a guideline to define how data is being exchanged between shore and ship. And this is an IEC guideline or standard that is called CIRM. And this is a very important guideline because this standard, it's not called a guideline in the IEC, it's called a standard. This standard explains how data can be exchanged from shore directly to the ECDIS. So you can have different technical services that can be transmitted to different systems, but of course the ECDIS being a very regulated device, this takes something extra. So the IEC standard CIRM is defined to enable this digital data exchange from shore to the ECDIS. And also there's a process within IMO, because in order to enable this, the performance standard of the ECDIS needs to be revised and open up for this possibility. So that is a process that is underway now in IMO that hopefully will open up for the CIRM standard to be used to deliver data to the ECDIS. And these technical services, there's a little important note at the bottom corner here. These technical services are, of course, something that is exchanging data between machine to machine, and then many times it will be visualized for a human, a navigator, or some other stakeholder. But these are, since they are machine to machine, also able to support mass. In fact, mass cannot be done on a global scale without such technical services. An autonomous vessel needs to get data in a harmonized way, harmonized data through harmonized channels with the harmonized data exchange in order for it to make the decisions that it has to make to go about its business on the global seaways. So this is also important to support MAS, these types of services. So building technical services using these different guidelines makes it possible to exchange the data. But there's actually something more needed, because I also mentioned at the beginning, this needs to be secure and reliable. And there's another guideline that IALA have made, G1161, which is about platforms to support these technical services, because we need, for instance, the ability to authenticate service providers and in some case service consumers. We need to be sure a navigational warning is actually coming from the authorities in that some specific country which is authorized to deliver that type of information. Sorry. And also, we're going to use internet technology more and more. And on the internet, as we all know, there is everything imaginable and then some. And it's a jungle, and we need to be able to find the technical services that is needed by whoever stakeholder is needing services. So we need a way of reliably support service discoverability, which is what the MCP is created for. And given the 10-minute presentation time here, I'm not going to dive into the MCP. But one thing I will point out is that the MCP, when we talk about the MCP, it is not a single system. The MCP is a fully decentralized system that has these abilities to provide authentication and service discoverability, and also a messaging service that Stefan was mentioning. It's a fully decentralized system, so we can have many different MCP service providers. That is a very important thing. Otherwise, it would not be possible to make this a global system. So these technical services should be developed according to these different guidelines and standards. And are they being developed? Are any technical services being developed in following these standards? And yes, they are. There is a task group in IALA that is developing technical standards for providing ATON information using the product specifications that Seung was mentioning in the presentation before. So that will be probably 1 or 2 technical services providing different types of aids to navigation information. And also recently, the VTS committee started a task group in IALA to create technical services following all these guidelines and standards for providing VTS information. Still very much in the early days, but that task at least has formally been started now. And in IHO, there's work being done to create a technical service for the provision of navigational warnings. And there's already some technical service that has been existing for some time. I think Anders from Navalink will be mentioning that, as which is being used on the Navalink platform. So that is something that's also that is actually already operational. And regarding MCP, I would just like to come with a short commercial here for a seminar that is being held. Actually, that would be next Saturday in the IALA headquarters. And if you can all keep a secret, it is possible, although this has been promoted as a physical seminar, which it will be, but it will also be possible to join online to follow this seminar. You just need to register on the IALA webpage, and we will set up the means to follow this online. So that was all from me. Thank you very much. Sumbe, back to you.
Okay, thank you so much, Thomas, for your presentations. I feel that you're talking like this. More maritime communities get their solutions to implement maritime digitalization from the MCP platforms. You show several kind of solutions regarding the authentication or cybersecurity of the exchanging data and everything. And also, thank you so much for your refreshing my remember of the IMO resolution 101 we developed together from 2017 until 2018. Thank you. And this is because the next speaker is going to show the practical showcase use case of the MCP without any question to the Thomas and administrative announcement, because our session is started 10 to 15 minutes late. So I expect our session will be finished around 18:10. So I'm going to try to finish my session before 18:10. Yeah, so next speaker is the Anders Wender from Navelink, one of the actual operators of MCP instances for the time being. So, Anders, are you ready to make a presentation?
Yes, I am. I hope you can hear me, and I will get your assistance with showing the slides. So, yes, I'm ready.
Yes, you are loud and clear. Go ahead, please.
Thank you very much. First, distinguished guests, Your Excellencies and ladies and gentlemen. First of all, we are very honored to be invited to speak for the second time, and thank you for a splendid conference so far, and we're looking forward to the rest. Today, I will focus on what we have accomplished, and we have accomplished a lot since we met last time. And I will start with some examples of actually what Thomas has been talking about. Next slide, please. First of all, I have 3 different conversations that just make you smile a little bit, maybe. But I think you will never have a conversation like that I show on the slide, that an Android telephone is not possible to call an iPhone. So what we really have done is to make people to talk to each other and increase the interoperability. Next slide, please. Another very interesting conversation would be if you had a lot of different app stores that you need to go through to look for something. And also, if we really start looking to, for instance, Google, are Google really trustworthy in different ways if you are running a trustworthy system? So what we are doing here is trying to look into discoverability and different ways of how to find each other and make it easier in the maritime domain. Next slide, please. The third, or more of a starting up discussion, is, for instance, today we have seen a lot of funny things when ships are trying to identify each other towards different kind of ports, authorities, etc. And today it's very easy for someone who would like to play a practical joke towards in the digital system. And that is also something we are really looking into, the integrity, the trust, and the security. So just as a start, next slide, please. Why is Navelink relevant? Why should anyone listen to us, or why should anyone actually have a meeting with us or anything? Well, if you would like to have a interoperable, trustworthy and secure platform for your communications, where you're actually leaving your own domain and talk with others, then I think Navelink, as Thomas just described as the MCP community, will be a perfect place to have the start. I said, next slide, please. I said I will focus on what we have accomplished. 3 years ago, we started this community and as a non-profit, and we are still a non-profit industrial consortium. So what we have really done is that we have set up, and I will show you some slides on how many today services is actually running through an operational system. Of course, we have fully implemented all the EU sanctions and other sanctions needed due to the development in the world. And also, as a token that we think that we are on the right track, everyone who is interested in have a discussion with us or try if this is something for you, it's actually free of charge for the first year, and there is no commitments made. So if you think this would sound interesting, please contact us or let us contact you. Next slide, please. Today, NavLink is a non-profit, industry-driven coalition of the willing, you could say, to establish a common infrastructure. A lot of the ideas and visions that we've heard and gone through the last decades, and also all these different projects shown on the lower left side, for instance, the STM Mona Lisa and other projects. We have really tried to actually make that happen in the real world with the great help of Thomas and the MCP. Next slide, please. So what are we actually providing? We are providing a trusted community with a very thorough PKI and a vetting process. We are having the possibility for you to find each other in an interoperable way, and not making up our own standards. We are following the ones agreed by IALA or anyone else. We give 24-hour, 365 days support to everyone, and we have a really thorough support agreement. What we are looking into, as Stefan Pilmeyer discussed before, is, for instance, the VDES compatible solutions, and we have gone quite far in that direction. Next slide, please. We are in a community already, NavLink. As Thomas described, there needs to be several platforms, and we need to find the solutions for actually getting us together. Today, we have the Minister of Oceans and Fishery, your instance, for instance. We have the NavLink instance, and we have the demonstrator as Thomas is running. So yes, the community is growing. Next slide, please. In NavLink today, we have several organizations, either direct or indirect, using the system, and we have more than 100, almost up to 200 services running, ships, VTS, ports, hubs, or whatever you would like. You can see a snapshot of the operational instance on the right side. There is also a lot of instances in the test and the development phase that will soon be released, etc. So yes, we have succeeded in making something operational. Next slide, please. NavLink has a very short history. We started in 2019 after long discussions between a lot of different stakeholders. And today, as you've seen before, a lot of users are already in the system. And we are hoping that more will start using NavLink as their PKI and service registry. Next slide, please. There has been a lot of discussion if it's no, but now NavLink or any government organization will know everything because all information is stored somewhere. This picture is just shown that no, NavLink is not connected. When you're talking about the operational information, it's just between the two users or three, or depending on how many you would like to share your information with. NavLink is not sitting on all the information. We are just making sure that you find each other, and we're making sure that you are who you claim to be. So you are really talking to the right instance. Next slide, please. And also, there is not one solution for everyone. So we have found out a lot of different ways of joining NavLink. And we hope that there is something that all of you will find interesting in trying. Next slide, please. There is everything from actually sitting around the table and decide what NavLink should be in the future, to just enroll as a user, or even being a so-called agent for someone who would like to try, but that would like your help in different ways. So we have really tried to figure out what will be the best way for all types of users to use NavLink. Next slide, please. That was all for a short summary of what NavLink have done since we met last. And yes, I think we are really on the right track. And together with Thomas and everyone else in the maritime connectivity community, I think we will succeed in the journey ahead. Thank you very much for listening.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, Andreas, for your very clear presentation to know what is MCP services like that. So among your presentation regarding the NavLink today, so most of the registry is the private sector like SAP or Brazil, something like that. But I can see the public agencies, AMSA. So what kind of the NavLink services related with AMSA this time? Because of the British?
Yeah, I would start with saying today more than half of all the services is actually governmental organizations, as we have the Norwegian Coastal Administration, we have the Estonian Transport Administration, we have the Swedish Maritime Administration, as well as the Finnish Maritime Administration. And they are actually providing half of all the services, which is very interesting. So we have actually tried to combine the private sector with the governmental sector, and that has been concluded. AMSA is actually have been using NavLink through the Swedish Maritime Administration, so there is the link between them. And that has been a development. We'll see what will happen in the future, if they will continue or not, but they have been a user through the Swedish Maritime Administration for actually having the picture where of the Baltic Sea, more or less, and some other places which ships are where, for situational awareness, I would say.
Yeah, thank you so much, because the private sector is really important to facilitate implementing the digitalization, but also the public sector is very important to go together. So that is why I'm asking about the AMSA or the public organization. So let's keep close contact with this kind of communication to facilitate the public and private sector together. Thank you. And the last but not least, our speaker is Ms. Gillian Carson-Jackson. Gillian, I hopefully that you can provide some kind of answer in advance through your presentation, how we can carry out what kind of international cooperation we should carry out to secure some kind of interoperability or harmonization that many stakeholders have concern on this. Gillian, are you ready to go?
Yes, I think I am, but you've really given me quite a challenge. And I think actually from all of the presentations we've had right now, it's going to be very difficult for me to actually give you some answers, but I will do my very best to actually make us think a little bit more again about international cooperation for maritime digitalization. Now, I'm just going to try and share my screen, if you will allow me to do so.
Thank you so much. Go ahead and summarize some concerns together during your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So it really is an honor to be here once again at Digital at Sea. It is my privilege. I really do wish I could be there in person, but what a great opportunity we have to have this ability to work within this hybrid environment. We certainly have come a long way. And from these presentations, we definitely have come a long way with that concept of the international cooperation for maritime digitalization. Now, I think I've been given a bit of a challenge to come with some solutions, but we've actually been listening to a number of solutions within this environment. So I'm actually going to focus a little bit more on the ideas and perhaps at the end put forward a few more challenges for this idea of international digitalization. Of course, just very briefly, to start, you may have my company reference within your program there, but also I am still very honored to represent the Nautical Institute as the immediate past president in my own work and with the work in the Nautical Institute and with the work that I do with IALA. I continue to focus on digitalization of the maritime environment. The Nautical Institute is very active in this area as well, and you may have actually seen just on Tuesday of this week, the workshop that we put on place, a seminar on mariners and the technology tide. And that was put on by the members of the Autonomous Technology Advisory Group, or the ATAG working group at the Nautical Institute. So just for now, for today, what I want to spoke of, I will look back a little bit at some of the past presentations that I've done at Digital at Sea and what you have been saying with regards to the international role and the role of cooperation. Then we'll take stock of where we are now. However, we've been doing and hearing from a lot of excellent presentations already, and you do have a lot in the future of this conference to look ahead at where we might be. So looking back a little bit, do you remember this slide? In 2020, I asked, what does cooperation mean to you? And these words came out, especially the ones that are larger are really out there, that together, the idea of harmonization, which we have heard a fair bit right now. Sharing of information, collaboration, the common interest, looking towards those aspects of understanding, a common goal. So cooperation within this environment, we are seeing it as actually happening. But in 2020, this is a slide that we said, and actually I want us to remember that because harmonization, working together, collaboration with a common goal, a common interest. I also asked you how much you agreed with these statements. These statements about cooperation and digitalization were highlighted at the time. The main concern was the maritime industry does not seem to have an effective approach to standardization. So that was the one that had the lowest rating. From what we have seen today already in this conference, we are seeing a growth and a push towards that standardization. But I do note the comments from the Secretary General of IALA at the end of the last session about the fact that we're still working towards this harmonization. It's very difficult. In this environment, though, we were talking about digitization and digitalization, and I do want to remind us what the difference is, because we do talk about the digital environment and digital data, but digitization is simply that process of converting information from a physical format into a digital one. We have gone beyond that. We are working in this digitalization, that process of leveraging the data from the digitization to improve business processes. So we're starting to see that the digital data exchange is just one part. And the last few presentations in this session really were highlighting that. We've gone beyond, yes, we need to get the data exchanged, but we need the value from that data. We need to be able to visualize that data or to have, as Thomas just said, that machine-to-machine reading of that data, moving us into the future. So the focus, I feel, from the work that we've done in 2020 was on international cooperation, which at its core is a focus on working together with a shared vision to realize the benefits of digitalization in the maritime industry. So let's just go forward a year. And just last year, we started looking then and saying, well, we know where we want to be. What's holding us back? So what are we doing about this? Standards were once again highlighted along with this global access to communications, frustration with keeping up with that speed of change. So we have this ongoing need for common standards. Beyond that, we need the availability of those standards. And that was highlighted as well. Noting the item that came in at item 4 there, the high cost to access some of these standards may preclude global implementation because they just aren't available. If we truly want that harmonized approach, we need to have that access to standards. I really appreciate that presentation from NavLink as well, where they're actually providing an opportunity with the platform really to get that out there. If we're going to have that international cooperation, we have to sort of balance out that shared vision and that desire for cooperation with also the commercial entity and desire to make a profit. So somehow we have to work with those together. That brings me to that second level one about the global access to digital communications, the digital divide. We know it exists. The move to embrace digital working methods really highlighted that. And throughout COVID and now in the post-COVID timeframe, we still see this lack of access to digital data and to communications. And it's not just from the sea, from the ship to the shore, it's also at various ports and various areas around the world where we're dealing with this digital divide. And so we really need to have that international, the globalization, the harmonization, we need to ensure that we address that digital divide. And of course, the only constant is change. Now, I don't know about you, but sometimes I feel I am always constantly chasing things that are changing. I'm trying to keep up. This leads us as well to rethink, how do we train? And I appreciate Mahesh actually include that in his presentation. How do we train? How do we retrain? How do we rethink the training and the upskilling? I think that needs to really stay high on our agenda. What was most interesting with those phrases, as there doesn't seem to be as much concern about our job and our job security. Digitalization is changing the way we're working, but it's not actually reducing our opportunities. It's actually enhancing those opportunities. So let's take stock. What have we learned? We can collaborate across distance and time. And I think I will take you up on that, Thomas, and try and participate with that session at IALA next week through the hybrid environment. We have shared challenges, and that leads to increased cooperation. We have increased opportunities within a shrinking world. We know that digitalization and decarbonization go hand in hand, and we had excellent examples of that in the previous section. And I must indicate as well that through the digitalization, through the sharing of information, we actually can support diversity, equity, and inclusion, leading to more and more innovation. I don't know where to start when it comes to looking at this international cooperation at work. We have seen so many examples. We are addressing the world's challenges with these multilateral activities. And I've just given a couple of examples up there. The IMO fully online session earlier last week with the development of the regulatory framework for maritime autonomous surface ships. The work that IALA is doing, the work at the Royal Institute of Navigation, the conference that I mentioned from the ATAG meeting, the development of maritime informatics and training in maritime informatics, and additional sessions that are happening, that are popping up, such as the Center for Ocean Policy and Economics that I'm actually honored to work with as well. This is just scratching the surface of where we see international cooperation at work. So in essence, this cooperation is providing a means to address the many challenges that we face on a global scale. And this in turn strengthens individual organizations and encourages innovation. So where to now? Well, we're really doing so much already, but I would still like to challenge us. How can we build on what we've learned? How can we address those haves and have-nots, that digital divide? How can we continue to tackle these contemporary challenges together? We need to continue our work towards common standards with global access to these global communications. We need to build on what we've learned, continue to find these new ways to collaborate, and support full participation, support environmental, social, and governance factors. This will also bring us forward and support sustainability. We know we can never keep up with the speed of change. We definitely can't keep up with the speed of change alone, but we have a chance for cooperation through collaboration. As Helen Keller said, alone we can do so little, but together we can do so much. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Julian. Thank you so much for your highlighting the point that the international cooperation is very necessary to secure some kind of harmonization and also interoperability on a global scale in terms of the maritime digitalization. Thank you. And I'm looking for only one audience who want to make a question against the speakers in our session. Is there some audience who want to make a question? Because of the time limitation, only one chance. No? Yeah. So I believe that all audience could understand what each speaker is talking about. The important thing regarding the platforms and standards to secure some kind of interoperability and also harmonization across the region and across all different systems developed by each nation. So I think this session was very useful, and our result can be used by the next session tomorrow. I hope you have a nice evening after this session. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, all speakers.
Thank you very much, our moderator, as well as our panel discussants. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you for staying with us until the very end. It was only day one, and everyone was so studious. And thank you for staying with us and participating in the sessions. Well, we will have day two, and we have 3 sessions left in our conference. And we ask for your participation and high interest as well. So we have concluded all of the sessions and presentations for the first day. So thank you once again. For today, we have prepared a dinner for all of our guests. So we kindly ask you to please participate in the dinner, which will begin at 6:30. So in just about 15 minutes. I have heard that the dinner will be very delicious. So we ask all of our guests to please join us for the dinner that is prepared. Tomorrow we will start bright and early at 10:30 a.m. And we also have the MOU signing ceremony as a side event. So we ask for your participation for that as well. Thank you once again for joining us on day one of the 2022 Digital at Sea Asia Pacific Conference. And we hope to see you again tomorrow, bright and early at 10:30 a.m. We were streaming live from the Lotte Hotel, Seoul. And this has been Ju Yeon Cho. I will see you tomorrow and have a lovely evening. Thank you very much.